Yo! What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. It is a brand new episode of Bets and Banter. This week on the show, we're talking UFC Vegas 106, and it is going down with Gilbert Durinho Burns defending his number 8 ranking in the world, and he's doing it against Michael Morales. Michael Morales on the other side, guys, a big kid, undefeated fighter, 17-0, 5-0 in the UFC. Getting his big break, his big opportunity. He's been on main cards. He's been in a couple of big fights, but now he's getting his first main event showcase with the industry leader. Is it the best fight card you've ever seen? No. Is the UFC putting their best foot forward in the Apex? Maybe not, but I think overall, we have some interesting fights to break down. We have some compelling bets that I'm seeing. So, Lord willing, we can find some good spots, some good opportunities, and keep the good times rolling. On a 2-event win streak, knock on wood, coming into this week, and a couple of nice posits in the right direction. Right, we got a couple of profitable weeks with good ROIs as well. So that's what we're looking to do. And Lord willing, we could do the same with our brother, Wizz MMA. He's back. He's ready for action, guys. We had last week the power panel. This week, we're back to the late night, and we've got Wizz coming fresh off of training. So we appreciate him being here. We appreciate him taking the time. My brother from another, Wizz MMA. How are you, man? You're muted, my friend. Blame me. I got you.
There we go. My guy, thanks for the solid introduction as always. Happy to be here as always. Just got off training. If you guys, see all this right here, I just cooked up a little bit of a feast, so don't mind me while I'm munching throughout this episode. But as always, excited to break down some fights. Very interesting card, I would say, from top to bottom. There really isn't too much to harp about in terms of prospects or, fighters that we're looking forward to see in the cage. But fights are fights. You put fights on any day, whether it's in the middle of the world or whether it's in Las Vegas, I will watch. So excited to be here.
Me too, my brother. And I think that there's a lot of unique aspects to these fights this week, right? We're talking about several different fighters that are moving weight classes, people with long layoffs, a lot of different interesting, unique kind of twists. And also, I think there's some fighters where, you can make a clear case like, hey, I could see this fighter winning this way. But then on the other side, you're like, I could also make a case for this fighter winning this way. And that is the kind of matchmaking that I do like. So very excited to talk about some of these matchups, but you guys know how we run it. On Bets and Banter, guys, we start at the bottom of the card. We work our way on up. So I'm going to share this Tapology screen. We'll all look at it together, and we'll see the first fight of the night. We got Luana Pinheiro taking on Tisha Pennington. And this is a very fascinating one for me, Wiz. I'll lead us off on this one because I was just doing some thinking about this fight, right? I have a betting strategy guide that I write every week, but I also do a prelims article for Roto Grinders. And so I had to lead out with this fight. This is like the first fight I had to write about. And it's kind of a hard fight to get a grasp on because on the one hand, you have a Luana Pinheiro. She's 3-2 as a professional to the decision. Not very good for a women's MMA fighter, but she's got some finishes to her name, right? 7 finish wins on her resume, none of them in the UFC. Honestly, her 2-1 record to the decision in the UFC is a little bit questionable for me. I thought Michelle Waterson-Gomez could have got the nod when she fought her, but didn't go her way. Ultimately, it was kind of a middling volume kickboxing type of match. When I look at this kind of matchup between these two ladies, Tisha Pennington's the older fighter. She's a little bit smaller in this spot. Luana Pinheiro is pretty big, pretty physical, pretty strong for the weight class, but very front-loaded fighter, not very good cardio, not very good pacing. And, something that really stood out to me was, I thought this was fascinating, right? Amanda Ribas, only KO win in her UFC run against Luana Pinheiro. Only submission win for Angela Hill in her 27-fight UFC career, Luana Pinheiro. So this girl has been the easy mark to finish, essentially, for these girls that actually have talent in the strawweight division. And then for girls like Michelle Waterson-Gomez that are on their way out, still had a chance to go out there and win that decision. Very competitive, right? So the things that are a little bit surprising to me, the money line feels a little surprising to me, right? Just because it's hard to favor a WMMA fighter with little finishing upside, minus 400. However, you look at Tisha Pennington these days, right? And she only has 2 finishes in her career. Both of them were in the UFC. She's had 17 fights at the UFC level. The vast majority have been competitive decisions with some of the elites in the division. And so I do think, like, when you try and say to yourself, okay, what's the best opportunity for Tecia Torres to finish a fight in a long time? It might be this one, right? And so when you start to peel back the layers of this matchup, like, Luana Pinheiro looks like the A side because she's 31. She's got a good frame. She looks good, on camera and these kind of things. But when it comes down to it, I think the problem is she doesn't have a fighter's mentality. Right. I think, she's willing to go out there and get into the fire and throw a little bit. But when the going gets tough, when she starts to feel fatigue, I feel like it gets the better of her. Right. Where some other fighters find a way to deal with it. We'll talk about other fighters later on the card where, maybe we've seen some vulnerability. Their cardio hasn't been aces every time, but their will to win is still there the whole time. And, even the fight that was a disqualification, kind of got away with one there, right? It definitely could have been a TKO loss brewing against Randa Marcos of all people. So I think that Luana Pinheiro, when she's on the receiving end of damage, she does not look very good. And Tecia Pennington, not normally the most damaging fighter, but she did bust up Elise Reed and was able to get her out of there. If I'm remembering correctly, that was the doctor's stoppage on her record. She has a submission win on her record as well. So if I was to get involved here, man, I'm looking at the Pennington side in terms of, maybe some finish props. Contrarian, right? I always like to give people multiple ways to look at a fight. If you really like Luana Pinheiro, I would strongly consider taking the money line because it's a big price, right? Over 3-1. I wouldn't get too cute when it's that kind of underdog price if that's the side you like. But in addition, this fight is minus 400 to go the distance, right? And you have a woman plus 5xx to win the fight by decision. That doesn't really make sense, right? It doesn't really track with me. It's like we're saying it's always going to be a decision, but Tecia always wins it, even though she's gone, 8-7 or whatever it is to decisions in the UFC. She's been a very 500 fighter to the card. So I don't know if that's a great idea to trust that. Also, it could take, one knockdown or one big moment from Luana Pinheiro to swing around where she gets otherwise out volume. These kind of things happen in WMMA. If there was to be wrestling and grappling upside, I think when they're fresh, I would put it on the Pinheiro side, right? It's just that if they get tired at all, I think her whole game falls apart standing on the ground any way you want to do it. So for me, the ways I'd look at this, like I said, on the Pinheiro side, don't get cute. Look at the money line, look at the decision. But I prefer the Pennington side. I think she's more reliable process, more proven fighter. Despite being 35, I think she's still in her physical enough prime that I'm willing to trust her in this type of spot where not to go lay the minus price, but to think, does she have some finishing upside if this gets late? I say the answer is yes. And so round 2, round 3, Pennington ITD, fight not to go the distance. Those are some ways I'd look to play it if I like the Tecia side, just because you have a Pinheiro who's shown willingness to get out of there in a DQ, in a submission, in a KO. Like, she'll stop the fight. She'll find a way to get that fight stopped if there's any kind of danger present. So for me, I think it's an interesting spot where props could pay dividends. What do you think about this one, Wiz?
Yeah, this is one of those fights where I don't have too much to add on to. Now, Luana Pinheiro, I'm very familiar with because I'm always in and out of Team Oyama's gym. So I always see Luana there, and this whole camp, she was very dedicated. She was in and out of the gym multiple times per day. So that was, promising to see. But to be honest with you guys, like, that's always been Luana. She's always been in the gym grinding it out, and she always shows up. Her preparation is always on point. It's just the execution. And when you're going up against someone like Tecia, who will take away minutes from you with her speed, it's kind of tough to catch up to, especially when Luana is not really the best striker, I would say. I think Ticia's speed might give her some issues here. Now, do I think Luana is going to maybe attempt a takedown or two? Possibly. Do I think she'll find much success? Not really, because Tecia has shown to have some pretty decent takedown defense, and then she gets up fairly quickly. She also is very short for the division, and these shorter fighters, they don't tend to get taken down as quickly. It's a weird statistic, but yeah, they just tend to pop back up to their feet very quickly, quick sprawls. So I don't think she'll find success in the takedown area. And if this fight hits the third round, and Luana's huffing and puffing, I do think Tisha has the opportunity to finish. So I agree with you there on the finishing point. So, I mean, no surprises. I think Tisha wins this by decision, but personally staying far, far away from this one. But yeah, no, not interested.
I think that makes sense, man. I'm happy with passing on this fight, but the ways that I've targeted, or excuse me, the ways that I've commented already are the ways I would target it if I was to get involved, right? So I don't think there's anything wrong with passing this fight. I think the right woman is favored. I think the price is, if anything, maybe a touch wide, but ultimately you have one woman who's proven like she's basically very, very difficult to put away at a professional level against a woman who's found the door on a bunch of different occasions. So I think Pinheiro has some ability to, compete here, but if she gets tired, if she goes through fatigue and those kind of things, like I just think Tisha has enough experience to kind of see that and maybe give her the door if she's looking for it. Shout out to Moises in the chat. Very good WMMA capper, good capper overall. But the judo throws will work with Tisha, he says. Interesting note. Shout out to Rick the Ruler, says LFG champ JDM. We called it on the show. Glad that some people cashed in with us. Just wanted to shout out to the chat. I'm seeing some very sharp guys in here. Reiko, Tim Troiano, Mayor of Midville, a lot of the regulars in here as well. Daz Files, Half the Battle, Dixon. Truly appreciate all you guys for the support. And without further ado, we're on to the next fight where Hyun Sung Park is taking on Carlos Hernandez. And Wiz, why don't you lead us off on this one? I think I started us on the last one.
Yeah, Hyun Sung Park coming off of the Road to UFC series didn't really have the most enthusiastic start to his UFC career. You look at the first two matchups. First one was against Sunguk Choi, who he was able to win by submission there. It was, I would say, close somewhat all the way until that sub came in. And then obviously they gave him Shannon Clark, who he then finished in the second round. But I'm not going to lie to you guys, Shannon Clark was having some moments. So that's always a concern. And it's a big red flag on the Park side. And then Carlos Hernandez is someone who I feel like the UFC just has something against. They're putting him up against the best. I wouldn't say the best competition, but some really freaking high-level names. Look at the record. Alan Nascimento, and this is the last five. Alan Nascimento, he beats the living shit out of Denis Bondar, Tatsuro Taira, Ray Suruya, and then his last fight was a win against Tumendembro by split, which a lot of people had Tumendembro winning that fight. Now, they're matching him up against someone in...
And some of us had Tumendembro picked in that fight and, of course, thought he won. Brutal.
Yeah, very close fight. That was very slim margins. And going up against someone with that kind of power, impressive. Not to get knocked out. But nonetheless, we're looking at the fight here, and I think the wrong guy is favored, quite frankly. I do think Carlos Hernandez should be more of like a -110, -120 kind of line, where closer to pick him. But at these odds, let me actually see what is the current odds for this fight, because it has been flip-flopping. But yeah, I think that Carlos Hernandez is going to be able to land takedowns here and potentially win the minutes on the feet, because whenever we see these guys come off of the road to UFC, they tend to not be able to show their skills and shine as much as their tape shows, because it's just their level of competition is not really that high in their amateur and their early professional career. So you have to take it all with a grain of salt. And it speaks volumes with Hyun Sung Park, who had some competitive minutes with Shannon Ross. I'm not going to, dig on that too much, but it is really a big point when you're having close minutes with Shannon Ross, with all due respect. That guy does not belong in the UFC, and that's why he no longer is in the UFC, to my knowledge. Current line on this fight, yeah, it's still -175 Park, +150 Hernandez. It's dog or pass for me here, no matter what, and I'm pretty sure I'm gonna click on the dog here. I do think that he's gonna be able to land takedowns. So give me Hernandez. I'm pretty enthusiastic about this one.
Very interesting. I like to hear where your head's at on this. I got a first shout out to Chris V for the dono in the chat. Thank you so much, Chris. Appreciate you, my brother. Very kind of you. And good luck to you as well, right? Good luck to everybody in the chat. Always, whether you agree, disagree, whether you ride with us, tail fade, or indifferent, appreciate you guys being here and supporting the show. Now, when I talk about this fight, I'm a guy that I've only bet, on 2 Carlos Hernandez fights in the UFC. And I bet the Tatsuro Taira fight, I had Taira to win inside the distance. Or excuse me, no, I had the fight not to go the distance. I don't want to speak out of turn. I had the fight not to go the distance, as well as Tatsuro Taira via knockout plus 750 in that fight. That was the first time, guys, pro or amateur, that Carlos Hernandez was ever finished with strikes in 28, now 29 fights. So the guy has been hurt before, but he's extremely tough. He's typically quite durable. Tatsuro Taira had to not only knock him down with the power on the feet. People weren't expecting that. I remember y'all told me I was crazy for that one. Tatsuro Taira put hands on him, dropped him to the ground, and then followed up with brutal ground and pound, was able to get the finish there. So I think that when you look at Carlos Hernandez, man, he's tough. He's difficult to put away. And, you ask basically, does the UFC hate this guy? Yeah, and I can tell you why. It's not like they hate him like some other guys that are hard to work with behind the scenes, whatever. I suspect this guy takes every fight they offer him, right? He's probably a consummate professional. He will continue to get work. So what I mean is they don't hate him. They're very indifferent to it, right? Like Carlos Hernandez, there's a phrase that Luke Thomas uses that I think is a little harsh, but it kind of sums up the reality of the situation. They don't care if he lives or dies, right? Like Carlos Hernandez is just a guy on the roster, right? That they want to put in fights because he'll say yes. And he's a good measuring stick, right? He's not going to be easy to put away. The guys that have put him away, we'll go back and look, right? Alan Nascimento, 15-0 career to the submission. A very, very competent submission grappler. And Tatsuro Taira, a top 10 guy. That's it. So it's like Carlos Hernandez, very difficult guy to put away. By the way, lengthy amateur run. So it's like this guy's got a lot of experience. This guy's got a pretty good depth of skills. I bet him 1.5 units against Ray Sorolla. It was a close fight, right? The difference was it was a plus 350 line. And even in hindsight, man, the one thing I don't like about Carlos is his game is not really built to win. It's built to fight close. You look at his record. He has 4 wins via stoppage as a professional. It's not a lot, right? So I think on the feet, his strikes not very damaging. I think that on the ground, his skills are very good. So it's like in this fight, the problem I have with capping it is I do think there will be moments where Park could take him down. I think either guy could get hurt here. Honestly, like Park's been knocked down twice by guys that are not very high level. So I don't trust Park's chin either. I kind of think that this is a prove it spot for a guy like Park. I think the price is prohibitive on that side. I don't think he has bad skills, but he's 9-0. He's never beaten a fighter I'm super impressed by, right? Shannon Ross, in my opinion, has the worst chin in the history of the UFC. And I'm not trying to be disrespectful at all, but I had said that before the Jesus Aguilar fight. I said, I should bet Aguilar by KO 10-1. I didn't take it. And he literally threw one punch, guys, and knocked him stone cold unconscious. So I think when you look back, like that is the truth of, Shannon Ross. He just does not have a UFC level chin. I believe he got submitted by Steve Erceg after getting hurt badly on the feet. Like the guy has decent skills and not the durability to fight at this level. So when I look at the Hyun-Sung Park fight, Park hurt him multiple times, but his grappling didn't blow your hair back in that fight. It looked okay, right? It looked good. He made some of the right decisions, but I think looking back at some of those other fights, like he got buzzed. He spent a lot of time like just sitting on his back, kind of letting the round pass him by. I think he's a little bit predictable in the sense that he's always going to be coming forward, kind of giving you opportunities to put shots out there that he could walk onto. And for me, this whole fight comes down to whether or not Hernandez can get takedowns of his own, because if he's able to mix in his own takedowns, I think he wins this fight. But if he's just getting taken down and fighting off takedowns the whole fight, I just don't think he's damaging enough or consistent enough with his volume and output on the feet to like consistently just get guys off of him. I think that's his biggest problem as a fighter. If you can't discipline somebody with power, then you have to just keep shots on them so they can't establish their wrestling. And I just think Hernandez, that's been his biggest struggle. But you look at the guys he's fought, quality, right? He's just fought a much higher class of fighter in the UFC. So for me, it's a dog or pass situation. I'm not as confident as my guy Wizz. I think I picked Park in my article. Let me go double check that. I don't want to speak out of turn. So I wrote this article in haste today. And I always let you know what I picked, man? I picked Hyun-Sung Park via split decision as my article pick. And that's honestly how I see this. I see this as a very close split decision type of fight. And if that's the case, then, probably a click on the big underdog price is appropriate.
Yeah, and I could see this line climbing. I could see it climb to like a plus 160, 170, 180 potentially. And, I'm just staying patient. I want to see how far this line goes because, I don't know, people see the shiny 9-0 record, and sometimes it's good and sometimes it's really bad. So we'll see where we're at.
In terms of like an undefeated record.
Mm-hmm. Now, when we look at Carlos Hernandez fighting out of Valley Flow Striking, I just hope he doesn't come in with the same game plan as Bellato. That's all I'm going to say.
I hear that. I wanted to shout out Dad's Files as well in the chat. Book plug, Range by David Epstein. It's for teachers and trainers and parents. It's about how we learn. I really like the sound of that, my man. I will take that book plug and go ahead and read that. So I appreciate that, Daz. Thank you so much for the shout, my man. And I hope everybody in the chat appreciate that as well. Readers are leaders, note takers are money makers, to quote my college wrestling coach. So learn something new every day. But ultimately, guys, I hope we covered that fight in enough detail for you. The bottom line, I think Park is an okay prospect, but I just think he really hasn't been tested yet at this level. I think Carlos Hernandez is a 500 UFC fighter to his core. He's no better than that, in my opinion. He's not dangerous enough to be better than that, but he's no worse than that either. I think if he has a bunch more opportunities, he could win more fights. I just don't think he's going to go out there and rattle off 3 straight wins in the UFC, go on a run, anything like that. I kind of think he's a mid-card act, so to speak. He's enhancement talent, if you will, but he's not a bad fighter. He's going to decide whether or not you're a real prospect. And I think that Ray Saruya, barely eked it out. That's why he wasn't a real prospect. I think that when you look at, and obviously give him time, right? But at the time, Tatsuro Taira handled him accordingly, right? Sent him to the land of wind and ghosts and was the first guy to ever do that. So I think that that's where you see. This is a guy who is a real barometer, right? Tell you where you're at. And I think Carlos Hernandez is going to be a real test for Hyun-Sung Park based on what I've seen so far. All right, guys. Next up, we got Denise Gomes taking on Elise Reed. And man, I've been betting Denise Gomes via submission. I want to go back and check and not speak out of pocket here, but I'm pretty sure I bet her via submission in a couple of these fights. Let me go check. So I'm on betmma.tips and looking back at my previous results. And man, I bet her by submission against Karolina Kowalkiewicz. I bet the fight ends by sub against Angela Hill, and there was a submission attempt in that fight. So I've been kind of looking for some submission angles on this girl for a while, and now she's finally priced like she's going to get a submission in this fight. And, you look at Elise Reed, frankly, she's 2 different fighters, right? She's one fighter on the feet. She's a completely different fighter on the ground. And I think on the feet, she's clever enough. She's got some decent movement. She could use her footwork. I think the small cage at the Apex is not going to be conducive to a lot of that, right? I think it's going to favor somebody like Denise Gomes, who pressures forward, very front foot fighter, looking to put you on your back foot, looking to press you into the fence at times. I think that if she wants, and if she's smart, she will be pursuing takedowns in this fight early, often. I think she can compete on the feet with Elise Reed. But the problem is Elise Reed likes to operate at kicking range. She likes to keep you back. She likes to use evasive footwork, lateral movement. That's why she wins decisions. I don't think she's ever lost a decision in the UFC. I believe she's 4-0 to the decision. On the other side, she's a girl that is simply not UFC level on the ground. And we've seen that a number of times, right? Loma Lukbunmi, I believe her first and only submission win as a professional was against Elise Reed. Lupita Godinez was able to fall over the top for an armbar, kind of a low level, with all due respect, right? Like lower percentage type of move, something you don't see every day in MMA. She was able to get that. And I believe it's only her second win in pro mixed martial arts via submission. So when I look at these 2 women, I see a physical specimen who's younger with more professional experience on the side of Denise Gomes. against a woman in Elise Reed who has, decent kickboxing and, fundamental movement. And she's got some decent experience. But other than that, I think she's athletically a step behind in this one. And I think that on the ground, she's very bad. So that's my overall assessment, man. I think that if Denise Gomes gets her on the ground, she should have an opportunity to either beat her up and ground her pound her out of there, or to get that submission game going, which she's threatened to do on a number of occasions, never quite pulled it off. Against Eduarda Mora, I actually bet her on the money line, and she was able to get the job done there as a pretty significant dog. That was, for me, a coming out party for her. Eduarda Mora hasn't lost another UFC fight, right? She's 2-1. She moved up a weight class, beat Veronica Hardy. Kind of an impressive win from her. So I think that Eduarda Mora is the truth. I think she's a skilled fighter and big and physical and powerful in her own right. Moved up to 125, did not look out of place. And I think that Denise Gomes has put together a pretty solid resume overall in the UFC. Her 2 losses, Loma Lukebunmi, a winning fighter, Angela Hill, a 27-fight veteran. I think both those women are better than Elise Reed. So I think Denise Gomes is going to get the job done, and that's the way I see it, man. How do you see this one going down, Wiz?
Yeah. Chat, we need to ask a question here. Who is more jacked, Denise Gomes or me? That's the real question, because I think Denise Gomes will beat my ass. I think this fight's pretty cut and dry. We know what Elise Reed is good at. It's just one of the aspects of MMA, which is a stand-up. She's decent. Denise Gomes, that fight against Eduarda Mora showed me a lot. A lot of people were ruling her out of that matchup, and the way she was able to, albeit a split decision, it was a close fight, but she really went out there and showed her skills. And ever since then, it seems like she's been taking her career a lot more seriously. She's looked a lot better on the scales, more muscular and more athletic. And I think she's just going to be able to take Elise Reed down here. She's going to be able to land on the feet as well, because although Elise Reed is a good striker, she doesn't really have the best striking defense. Her footwork is what saves her most of the time. But in the smaller cage, as you mentioned, Liam, it's going to be a little bit tougher to angle out of these shots for too long before you pick up on a read, before Denise starts to cut the cage off and really force her into whether it's a takedown or whether it's an overhand. So I do think that Denise, obviously at -500 here, is I think she wins. I actually think it's going to be inside the distance. I'm playing the submission at +475 on Bet Online, and then I'm going to wait and see what else I can get there. But yeah, I like the submission. I like the ITD. Unders are good too if you guys want to play both sides. But it's hard for me to see a way that Elise Reed finishes Denise. So I'd rather just play the one side.
Would have to be a head kick, in my opinion. And that's basically the way we see knockouts in WMMA, right? I'm thinking like Shi Ming and like these other Eunice Dubin and these kind of things. Like it's either a big swinging overhand right or a head kick, All right, my man. Next up, we've got Luana Santos taking on Tainara Lisboa. And I really like Tainara Lisboa when she was coming into the UFC, just in terms of, she kind of got a cool backstory, fought Valentina Shevchenko all the way back in 2010, a handful of times, right? She's got some decent physicality for WMMA. You can see, kind of bodied up, big bodied woman. And she's 34 years of age, right? She has not been supremely active in the UFC. I think that's a problem. And when you look at Luana Santos on the other side, hard girl to get a beat on, right? She's kind of been beating up on the dregs of the division when she stepped up in competition, fought an age-level peer. Things didn't work out against Casey O'Neill, but I kind of think it's interesting that she actually missed weight before at 135 in the UFC. She fought Stephanie Egger, who's not a small woman and who has a judo background. And what surprised me in that fight was that she was able to just push her around, bully her in the clinch, back her up to the fence, kind of controlled a lot of that fight physically. And I think that when you look at, Tainara Lisboa, if I had to criticize any part of her game, she started to rely on the wrestling and the grappling and being offensive in some of those positions, since coming to MMA, right? If you look back at her first fight against Norma Dumont, she made a couple of huge mistakes, gave up her back, ended up getting submitted, but she was doing some damage and, putting it on Norma a little bit. So hard debut, right? Then she fought another girl who I think Lorani something, I'm drawing a blank on her name, but essentially, a decent enough fighter, but nothing to write home about. A girl who lost, the biggest fight of her career in Bellator. She'll be back in the LFA coming up, so we'll see how she turns out there. But looking at Luana Santos, she's 25 years of age. She's young, right? She's got the grappling background in her back pocket. And the one thing about Lisboa is like, do I think she's the more technical striker? By a mile, right? I think she's the better striker. I think she's got more technique. But do I think she makes some mistakes in the grappling? Yes. Do I think that, Jessica Rose Clark is exploitable in the grappling? To a comical degree, no disrespect, but like I made a lot of money fading Jessica Rose Clark on the way out, right? I'll just leave it at that. When you look at Lisboa and the women she's beating, I would also consider them pretty unproven, pretty low level in the division, right? Ravena Oliveira, what has she proven so far in the UFC? Not much. So I say to myself, Juliana Miller just bounced back, got a win, right, against a low-level opponent, but got another win under her belt in the UFC. So she's got about a 500 record. She hasn't had much pro experience. You see Luana Santos, though, she's gone out there and gotten a couple wins. Now I think she's making a career decision. Hey, let's not cut so much weight. Let's do it at 135. Let's make the weight the correct way here. And I think that there's a chance that, she still hasn't grown into her body enough physically. She's just turned 25. She's got a lot of maturing to do still, but she has more pro experience. She's been the more active fighter recently. I think that she's got the grappling upside, which is always something I'm looking for in WMMA. So unless Tainara Lisboa's physicality is just off the charts and the knee injury is nothing to worry about, and unless all these kind of things come to fruition, I just think it's going to be a tough night for Tainara Lisboa. So for me, the reluctant, hesitant pick here was Luana Santos via sub or decision. I don't think it's an easy call, but that's the call I made ultimately. And I think it's a competitive fight. I understand why, there's love on both sides on the line, but I do think Luana Santos just has shown me a couple different paths to winning UFC level fights. She's got a sub in the first round. She's got a TKO victory in the first round. She's shown an ability to go out there and fight for 15 as well. So man, I just think she's shown me a couple different paths to winning this fight. How do you feel, Wiz?
This is where we part for the first time. And I'm not going to say this convincingly. I think this fight's going to be very close. Now, to speak on the Luana Santos side, the reason she's actually moving up in weight, Liam, is she's had issues with her thyroid. And whenever you have an issue with a thyroid, it causes fluctuation in weight, and it's sometimes very hard to control. And I saw Luana, and I spoke to her at the PI last month when I was there. She's been training there for the past few weeks, and she seemed normal. She didn't obviously give anything away, but definitely looked more on the heavier side. Now, the big question is, does this move up in weight class help her or hurt her? Because when she was at 125, she was already kind of slow in the striking. And one thing that I really hate in WMMA as in general is the head and arm throws. The stupid judo throw from the head, and it doesn't really work. And that's what Luana tends to go for. And not just, sparingly. We've seen her go for it like multiple times in a single round. So that's always going to be a red flag for me, because that's just giving up your back. Now, do I think Tainara Lisboa is going to take advantage of that? Probably not. But I do feel like Tainara, if the fight gets up close there and she's able to defend the toss, she's going to be able to land nasty elbows in the clinch. Lisboa is a pretty decent striker. I'm not going to harp on her too much. Obviously, she went to decision with Valentina Shevchenko. But I think if Tainara was a little bit younger, I would have already had a bet placed on her. I think the age might be a factor here, but here's the thing. It's very low-level MMA that we're talking about in this fight. We have two fighters who have really not faced the best competition, so we don't have much to go off of in terms of ranking their skills and measuring them up. But I do think that Tainara's striking is going to prove to be superior here against Luana Santos, who was eating some clean punches from Juliana Miller in the fight, which that is concerning in itself. So if Luana doesn't get this fight to the mat, I think she's toast. For me, I'm going Lisboa. I haven't pulled the trigger yet, but if the line gets tempting enough, I probably will.
Fair play, my man. I'm seeing a lot of sharp guys in the chat that are liking the Lisboa side. I'll watch a little more tape on this one. This is one where I'm just going off my gut instincts, right? Because I was pretty big on Lisboa coming to the UFC, but I kind of have soured on that a little bit in the subsequent performance against Ravena Oliveira. But let me go ahead and rewatch some footage here and make sure that I do my due diligence, make sure that I'm not missing out on an opportunity here. But I just felt like I've seen a little bit of Lisboa kind of falling back into grappling, where I just don't know that that's going to work long term in the UFC. But we'll have to find out, and I will acknowledge that this is one where I'm relying on my memory. So if I go back and watch, and everything is not as it seems, I'll let you guys know that as well. But I just wanted to be very clear about that. All right, next up, we've got Connor Matthews taking on Yadier DelValle. DelValle, I don't know exactly how you pronounce it. I went back and listened. It sounded like a couple different announcers pronounced it different ways, but we're going to go with DelValle, and hopefully that's correct. So, Wizz, let me know what your thoughts are on this one, brother. We'll start with you.
Yeah, I think this one's very binary. I think, well, not even binary. I think if wherever this fight goes, DelValle should handedly have Matthews covered. In the striking, we've seen Matthews, unfortunately, like with a lack of better terms, he's a punching bag. And DelValle, if I give him anything, he does have some hands, throws out some volume, and then if he takes you to the mat, you can kind of control. You would expect him to have a little bit more wrestling, being from Cuba, but hasn't really shown it too much. I just think that he's going to be able to outpace Connor Matthews, and I think he probably finishes him too on the feet. So for me, it's DelValle, but no surprise here. I don't have too much to say because this fight really, it was one of those where you tape a couple of fights and you realize why he's a minus 400, minus 500 favorite. So for me, I think it's DelValle covers the price.
Yeah, I think DelValle has him covered here. And the things I want to acknowledge up front. Number one, it's a UFC debut. We've seen really good fighters go out there and shit the bed in their UFC debut, then go put together a really great UFC career. I think Eddie Alvarez lost his UFC debut, and a couple fights later, he won the lightweight title. So just keep in the back of your mind, it doesn't matter whether you win or lose your UFC debut. It's not going to make or break your career in the promotion as long as you respond the right way. But bottom line is, this guy fought in the Apex before, right? So it's not like he's doing something crazy new and different. Oh my God, it's in front of a huge crowd, it's nothing like that. Right? It's going to be in front of, the Apex Center where he fought before, by the way, in my opinion, Albert Monteiro would beat the shit out of Connor Matthews. That's a personal opinion, but I sincerely believe it. So when it comes down to it, in my opinion, he fought a much harder fight against a much bigger, stronger guy who frankly was like insanely tough in that fight. Yadier had him submitted in the first round and he was saved by the bell. He had him knocked out in the second round, and the guy is just insanely tough. So he just kept taking like fight-ending blows. Like the guy was out on his feet, taking clean elbows to the face over and over. What steroids they put that guy on before that fight is going to be a marvel of science for years to come, because I'm telling you guys, he got hit with knockout blows 10 times and just kept waking back up. Nah, I'm cool. Like, he would bust open, like a cut is like spurting out from his head. And man, it's just like grabbing a hold of him, getting back up, swinging again. I was like, this guy is unbelievable. So I think Albert Monteiro, tough as an old leather boot. The guy has been finished once in like a 20+ pro MMA career. It's like, yeah, that guy is just hard to get out of there. But DelValle did everything but kill the man. He landed 125 significant strikes. He took him down with beautiful timing, right? The guy gets you to start moving forward, throwing it, and then he just shoots right underneath you. It's like, I really like the process behind this kid's game, and I liked it coming into Contender Series. I like it more afterwards. He can throw punches on the feet. He can mix in kicks, whether it's to the calf or to the body, occasionally to the head. He's not really the most flexible fighter you've ever seen, but he can shoot takedowns. He's not afraid to get into a battle in the pocket if he needs to. And when he gets hurt or tired, he doesn't fight like an idiot. He fights smart. He backs up a little bit. He starts to move backwards, throw his combinations, get you to react. Then he goes for a reactive takedown. The guy doesn't put himself in too many bad spots. When he gets put in a bad spot, a guillotine, something like this, he doesn't panic tap. He just pulls his head out, starts fighting hands. He does a lot of things right that I like to see from a fighter. So I think that number one, I'm looking at a guy in Connor Matthews who he's been finished 4 times between 5 losses, pro and amateur. The guy's not very durable at the end of the day. Dennis Bazooka, maybe not known for his punching power, right? With all due respect, goes out there, puts him away, right? He struggled to finish guys regionally. That was like the big complaint about Dennis, why he took so long for him to get to the UFC. Couldn't put anybody away regionally. Put him away. Kind of a problem, right? You go back and look, it was a minor miracle Connor Matthews wasn't put away on the Contender Series. He gets hurt badly in that fight, in a fight, in my opinion, that was set up for him to win. I said that at the time. So this is not revisionist history. I was like, they're trying to get Connor Matthews a winnable fight. This guy looks big, long, whatever, but he's just like a strong breeze and the guy's falling over to his back. So I was like, this is a really easy setup fight for Connor Matthews. And he really struggled there, man. Really struggled. So I think when you look at Connor Matthews, man, he's just not this level, right? And the Francis Marshall fight, he fought Francis when Francis was just a boy. And Francis was still able to go out there and get the win over him. So I don't rate this guy's game. He's got a good record to the submission. You've never seen any evidence of it really at this level. I think he had 1 submission attempt against Francis Marshall. So hats off to him there. He attempted some subs against the guy on Contenders, right? But I think DelValle showed he's got good submissions. In that last fight, like he had that guy Montano dead to rights on that guillotine. Like if there was more time, that fight was over. And then he goes out there and shows like, man, even after I just went for a fight into guillotine, which by the way, guys, some people can never recover from that, right? You spend all this energy, you're going for a hard choke. You're putting a lot of squeeze in, right? A lactic acid buildup. There's a reason they say there's different energy systems to strike and grapple. I'm holding on, I'm squeezing, I'm pushing, I'm pressing. It's completely different, right? So you look at how he was able to come back out and throw big punches, big elbows, knees, all after that, and then go wrestle again more. I think the guy's got good cardio. Here's the other thing. He's got a better win outside the UFC. Michael Aswell, a guy, in my opinion, that will be in the UFC, a guy who's dominated in Fury. He's got a win over him. How about this? We'll talk about him later, but there's a guy on this card. I'm going to scroll up for just 1 second so I can see his name again. Mateus Camilo, okay? Mateus Camilo is fighting on this card. He got beat by a guy in Fury named Arik something or other. I'm drawing a blank on the guy's name. I'll give him credit and respect when we get there. But Arik, I actually tweeted to the guys at Tapology that they have it wrong. They have it listed as a round 1 submission. I watched the fight. It is certainly a round 2 submission. But in any case, you go back and watch, and Yadier DelValle fought that same guy, and he beat the shit out of him, right? That guy is hittable on the feet, but he's very hard to put away. And so when Camilo tried to put him away and then gassed himself out and got finished, you see the difference in quality of fighter at times when Yadier DelValle said, no, I'm not going to exert myself here. Let me take a step back. Let me let this guy exert himself. Then let me go ahead with my offense. And he finished the fight on top, dominated to a decision there. So I think when you look at Yadier DelValle, it shows his fight IQ. The guy's gone to decision a few times, but when he was an amateur, 3 wins by submission. The guy is dangerous on the ground. He's dangerous on the feet. It's a minor miracle that last fight wasn't stopped. I think he's going to finish Connor Matthews as well. We agree on that. And I'm going to leave it there. But Arik Mercado, thank you so much for saying that. And shout out, I had a great wrestler on my team with the last name Mercado. So a last name worth celebrating. Shout out to Arik Mercado. And he's honestly a good fighter. I think he's athletically kind of a step behind a lot of guys in the UFC, but what do you see from the guy? Heart, toughness, willingness to push on. Camilo beat his ass, right? Like, let's not get it twisted. He took an ass whooping to win that one, but he was willing to, and he was able to, and he had the skills to put him away, deep in that fight when he had taken some damage. So I think that, that guy, impressive guy, tough guy, maybe he gets a shot on Contenders, but bottom line is Yadier DelValle showed his level in that fight and showed that he's smart, savvy, and dangerous in all of these fights. So even the fights where he's not getting the stoppage, guys, he's putting hammers on guys. He's beating them up. And the more experience, the more confidence that he gets, I think it's more likely that he's going to put more guys away. So give me Yadier DelValle in a big way in this one. I think he's going to announce himself in the UFC. And do I think he's got, a championship ceiling? Maybe not, but do I think that he's going to be, somebody to contend with, for a while here? Yeah, 28 years of age with a pretty well-rounded game already, with some good physical attributes and a willingness to bite down on the gum shield and keep coming forward. He lost his gum shield, with maybe 30 seconds left against Montero, and what did he do? kept fighting in the pocket, kept beating him up. I was like, man, this kid's got heart, grit, toughness, skills. I like it. Checking a lot of boxes, so I think he wins. All right, man. Next up, we got Jared Gordon taking on Thiago Moises in a battle of lightweight stalwarts. You know, you got two guys that are both veterans of the division, both 8-6 in the UFC, one no contest on the side of Jared Gordon. But when you look at, Thiago Moises probably fought a slightly better brand of competition overall. Fought in Islam Makhachev in a main event, these kind of things. But he's never really beaten those guys, right? He's fought up a higher level of competition. He's normally fallen short in those matchups. And, I feel like he's a very inconsistent fighter. If I had to make a criticism of Thiago Moises, I feel like there's some times where Thiago Moises comes out and he's got the confidence. He's willing to stick behind a jab, move around on the outside, use his footwork, and smother people with the grappling, right? Which is his best attribute. He's got very good grappling. He's got very good, he's got solid wrestling. He's got very good back takes. He's got very good jiu-jitsu. And I think that when he's at his best, he's using that wrestling and jiu-jitsu as a threat. Whether he's getting to it or not, he's threatening with it. And then he's using the jab. He's using the footwork. He's using his experience. The guy's not very devastating with the power. I think he's got 4 knockouts in his career. When he's going out there and hurting guys like, what's his name? Mitch Ramirez, I think. He's throwing a lot of calf kicks, right? He's kind of busting him up with the low kicks. He's not really damaging him with punches. He's not that guy. He can go out there and win a contentious boxing match, using his jab like he did against Alexander Hernandez. He disciplined him with the jab. He moved his feet. He did a lot of smart things in that fight. But he didn't outland it by a million shots, right? He kind of kept it close, but just made sure, like, close but clear. I'm winning this fight. Maybe he could do that here. I think the only way that this fight looks easy for Thiago is if he goes out there and either can run over Jared in the wrestling and grappling, which I think is unlikely, not impossible, but I would say it's pretty unlikely. Nobody's really done that to Jared except the best guys. And then you look at, in the striking, I think Jared does more. Like, I think he puts out more offense. I think he throws more strikes. He's doing more in his fights. He'll push you back to the fence. Like, he's not a perfectionist. He'll push you into the fence, make it ugly, punch you in the body, just grind it out with you. And the God's honest truth is, Thiago Moises doesn't like to be in fights. He does not like to be in fights that are tough. He does not like to be in fights that are gritty. So you have this compelling narrative where on the one side, like, Thiago's a more durable fighter than Jared Gordon by a pretty considerable margin, in my view. I just don't think he's very dangerous. So I don't think he's super likely to knock out Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon, that's his biggest liability, guys. He's a walking knockout waiting to happen. No fault of his own. Just a bad chin, in my opinion. Like, some guys have great ones. Some guys have bad ones. But even in his last fight, Nasrat's not a soft-hitting guy, right? He's got some power in his hands. Landed like 140 significant strikes, and Jared took him fine. So maybe Jared found the fountain of, youth or whatever. He found some supplementation, whatever it takes to keep that chin a little bit in better working order. Maybe it's that, or maybe just the chin is flukish, right? And he got knocked out a couple times early in his career, but it's never going to happen again. I would say I still think he's a chinny fighter, but I just don't think Moises is the guy to knock him out. So it's like, all right, is Moises going to submit him? It took Grant Dawson making this guy fundamentally exhausted, like literally just got him so tired he could not move anymore in order to submit him. And I don't think Thiago Moises has that game plan at all. So it for me just feels like a Jared Gordon decision. Like it feels like Jared is probably going to either overwhelm him over the course of this fight, which the one thing about Jared is he doesn't have the power really to bust a grape either. So I think Jared's probably going to land a million shots in this fight, outland him 100 to 60, something like that. And probably win a decision. That's the way I see this one going down. I think Jared wants to be there more. I think he's more willing to get in a dirty fight. I think he will put out more offense to be judged. But I think his biggest liability is the fact that, he could just give up one bad position, get hurt and get finished. But if he doesn't get hurt in this fight, I think he wins it. So give me Jared Gordon by decision. How do you see this one going down?
Yeah, this one, interesting fight. I mean, look, Jared Gordon is 36, but I do feel like his past few fights, we've seen probably the best Jared Gordon in his career. Moises, on the other hand, I just don't really like his game. He's one of those fighters that likes to fight. nice. He fights pretty. He wants everything to be, set up perfectly, and that doesn't tend to work out against fighters like Jared Gordon, because Jared Gordon is going to be in your face and he's going to pressure you, and he's not low volume. He's actually quite the opposite, very high volume from Gordon, albeit lacks the power. But I also think that Gordon might be the better wrestler of the two. Moises has the jiu-jitsu, like, don't get me wrong, but when it comes to the wrestling, he doesn't really have the best shots. And then when you look at the Moises fight versus Ogden, and you look at the optics in the boxing versus the wrestling, it's kind of shocking to me how Ogden was, in my opinion, landing the better shots on the feet, and also able to skirt around the cage and land whenever he wants on Moises. And I think Jared Gordon's a much better striker than Trey Ogden. The fact that Gordon can fight from southpaw and from orthodox, I think that's going to help him massively here. I think the volume is going to cause a lot of issues for Thiago Moises. And I think over the course of 15 minutes, Thiago Moises' best attribute is going to be trying to find the back take or trying to find a way to get this fight to the mat. And I just don't see it happening. I think that Jared Gordon's going to keep this fight upright. I think if he wants to wrestle, he can. I don't think he will at all. I think this is going to be a 15-minute striking match where Jared Gordon wins a 30-27 decision.
There you have it. We see it the same way, man. We both are picking Jared Gordon by decision. I'm not super bullish on this pick. New York in the building. I really like Jared Gordon's story. I root for the guy. I think he's got like a very easy, kind of story to root for. But at the end of the day, when we're talking about betting on fights, I neither want to let my bias get in the way, nor do I want to, just get involved because I think somebody's going to win. I think Jared Gordon's going to win, but I do think this should be a closely lined fight. I think these are both guys that kind of need this fight in some ways. Like Jared Gordon, he's not getting any younger. If he wants to keep his fight career relevant and maybe on cards that aren't random Apex showcase fights against veterans in the division, he kind of needs to win this one, right? But on the other side, Thiago Moises, probably a guy that if you had said like 3 years ago this fight was happening, Thiago Moises would have been a big favorite in my view because people had a different perception of him. Guys, keep in mind, he closed minus 225 against Joel Alvarez. So Thiago Moises is a guy that was looked at way differently a couple of years ago, and now he's kind of been found out, and now he's kind of looked at on a different tier and a tier below where he used to be. So for me, I think both these guys really need this fight, and I think it should probably be closely lined.
And we were there,
right.
plus
Oh, please, go
190
ahead.
Joel Alvarez. We were there, plus 190 Joel Alvarez, big. We were
Nicely
always
done.
there. But
Nicely done, sir.
I will repeat what I said earlier for a different fight. Does the UFC hate Jared Gordon? But in a different way. Do the judges hate Jared Gordon? Because this guy has been done dirty by the judges a lot. That's the concern. But let's go Jared Gordon.
Yeah, and Thiago was a pick'em with Ludovic Klein, says Tristan, which is interesting. The thing about Thiago, I kind of mentioned already, I do think he's inconsistent, and I think he hasn't been very great lately in terms of being aggressive, coming out with confidence, like believing he's going to win these fights. And against Jared, like maybe we see the best version of him because Jared's not very dangerous. I think that's the number one, like if we were to see like a great performance from Thiago, it'll probably come from that. But I remember even when Thiago submitted, what's his name? Michael Johnson back in the day, bro, he was on the back end of like a borderline 10-8 in that first round. The guy has kind of always been a deer in headlights early in fights if guys bring pressure at him. So for me, that's something it's hard for him to overcome. I picked Benoit Saint Denis with a lot of confidence against him because I was like, Benoit Saint Denis is going to come at this guy with the fury of 1,000 suns. And if he does not kill him, he's going to get killed. Like I was like, there is no way that Benoit will not let this guy off the hook. He's going to get after him early. And he went takedowns. He grinded on him. And bro, you could tell after 4 minutes, Thiago Moises was like, bro, I don't want to be here anymore. So for me, just probably a fight I'll be passing on entirely, but I think Jared Gordon gets it done. I feel very little confidence. All right, man. Next up, speaking of the devil, Mateus Camilo, It's taking on Gabe Green in this matchup. And Gabe Green, a California guy, I believe. You can correct me if I'm wrong about that, Wiz, but I'm going to kick it over to you first, brother. Why don't you tell us what your thoughts are on this UFC debutant, on Gabe Green coming back here off a bit of a layoff? How do you feel about this fight? How do you feel about this new weight class for Gabe Green, a former welterweight coming back down to 155 for the first time in a while? A lot of things to break down in this one. I'm curious about your thoughts.
Yeah, Gabe Green out of San Pedro, California. Not anywhere close to where I am, but definitely a Californian. Where has Gabe Green been? You look at his Instagram, and I think the man has all good on him. Has found his faith and has gotten closer to God. And yeah, usually when fighters are, and he's not even old. I'm not saying this to say that he's old, but when fighters start to age and lean a little bit closer to God. We saw what happened with Rory McDonald. It just doesn't tend to go well. It kind of shows that, their head may be out of it or they may be into different things. I think Gabe Green moving down to 155, where at 170, his chin was already not the best, getting finished, I believe it was 3 times at 170. That is also questionable. And when you look on the other side of Mateus Camilo, he's not someone to be too impressed with. Sure, 9-2, has some decent striking. This guy is the guy that fought that dude Dorobshov, that was yelling out something during the press conference in Abu Dhabi, I believe it was, and asked Dana for a fight. And they fought on Korean Zombies promotion, and he won a unanimous decision against that guy, Nabatov. So I think Camilo is going to be the much faster striker here. And there's been reports over the past couple of months that Gabe Green actually was in the hospital for something along the lines of like his heart stopping for a couple of seconds after being punched in the chest. So I don't know how true that is or not, but I've heard it from multiple different sources, and that's kind of concerning. We also need to remember that Gabe Green did have that heart condition earlier in his career that he had to deal with. So I don't know. I think all things are trending downwards for Gabe Green here, also coming off of a long layoff. Going up against someone who's younger, definitely hits harder. And when you already have a bad chin at 170, cutting the extra 15 pounds is not going to do you any justice. For me, I think this is Mateus Camilo by knockout, by finish, whatever you want to call it. I didn't tip the line because I got it very early, but I got -170, and I took that pretty big. So yeah, I'm on the Mateus Camilo train. Let's see where we go.
Interesting. We see this one a little bit differently, but it's not to say that I'm like bullish on Gabe Green, like far from it, right? I'm very questioning, right? I'm keeping an open mind, but I have skeptical hippo eyes about Gabe Green. I definitely want to find out more about those rumors that you were talking about. I think that that's certainly worth knowing about before you put any money on somebody. Make sure that they're healthy, make sure they're coming in the right way. All I was aware of was that his knee popped. Mayor of Midville in the chat mentioned it. Did have knee surgery. I saw that. I was reading an article about Gabe Green, and essentially it talked about, like you said, the newfound faith, but also, he's become a father. He's got a lot of different things going on in his life. He did seem like a guy who had a lot of perspective, though. I think when you're looking at a guy coming back from a big knockout loss, one of the only things that I've seen besides just like fundamental sports psychology that gives people the confidence to keep coming back, like it almost requires a certain amount of delusion to do this, right? To go fight, to go compete when you've already lost, right? Because you have the evidence right in front of you that you could look at that says, I'm not good enough. I can't do it. He's better than me. Like what, anything you want to do, negative pattern of thinking. And especially like a fighter's been knocked out. Fighters always tell themselves, I can never be knocked out. No way, I could never be knocked. And then they get knocked out and it's like, no, I could be knocked out. It's like, yeah, hard to lie to myself now. I could definitely be knocked out. It definitely happened. It was on national television. Everybody saw it. So it's the kind of thing where it can be difficult to deal with that and rationalize that and come to terms with it. Gabe Green's been knocked out before, right? So it's not the first time in his career. But he basically said, I had a conversation with my coaches. They said, listen, you're fighting the best guys in the world now. He said I was force feeding myself. I was eating as much as I could to try and be a welterweight, be a real welterweight. I can just tell you guys, I tried to move up to 165 for wrestling in college. I was force feeding myself. I felt disgusting, and I was weighing 164. It was very difficult, right? I just tell you, cutting weight, gaining weight, any way you want to do it, managing weight, not fun. Right. When I'm talking about like for specific combat set, you're trying to change your body composition. You're trying to do hard workouts. You ever tried to work out while your stomach's full? You will feel like you have to puke. You will feel disgusting. You'll feel heavy. So it's just the kind of thing where I think Gabe Green maybe was shooting himself in the foot a little bit. He's 5'10", right? 73-inch reach. We got guys 6'3", fighting in the lightweight division. Right. So we can just be very clear about that. He's clearly sized where he could come down in this division. And he's 32 years of age. So at that point, you could either be done with your career, and he's 11-5, right? There's a chance that this guy's career is just over. Or you could be looking to reset your career, right? And get back on track and say, hey, no more messing around at 170 where I'm really not giving myself the best chance. Let's go down to 155. Let's see what all you have in yourself. And I got to be honest, guys, I did more tape on the Camilo side than the Gabe Green side. Why? Gabe Green has had 2 fights since 2022. What all am I going to tape, right? Like I can go back and watch old tape of his, and I'm going to get a feel for his grappling. Because frankly, I think Mateus Camilo has suspect grappling. And I will put that out there right now. I think his grappling, he is very aggressive. He's very offensive. He knows a triangle choke. Like he'll go for some stuff off his back. His guard, I think, is very aggressive. His opponent, that Russian guy in his last fight, his only loss before was via triangle. And so he almost triangled him a couple times. I just think that guy is kind of a bonehead, right? His whole plan is to take you down, get to the top position. And then if you throw up a triangle, he's like, what? Huh? Like, it's like he's never seen it before. It kind of blew me away. But in any case, right, that guy was also exhausted about 6 minutes into the fight. Like, he was running on fumes. He was getting knocked over by leg kicks and things. Like, he just looked like a guy, who spent a lot of energy early, wrestled himself into a hole is the way I like to describe it, and then had nothing left to give. And when I go back and I watch, I mentioned before, right? I watched Mateus Camilo's loss, his most recent one, to Arik Mercado, right? Arik Mercado was able to submit him. Arik Mercado, guys, got absolutely destroyed in the first round. Like, he was getting beat up. He was getting smashed. He looked like he was on the verge of being finished a couple times. But the guy is really sad. He gets hurt. He's long, gangly. He rolls into your legs. He's like, all right, come on, get in my guard. Like, he starts messing around with his leg, and he's a tricky guard player. But when you watch Camilo, the thing that really scared me about him in that is, like, number one, he went out and he looked for the finish early. I talked about before, a guy like DelValle hurts him really bad, right? Same opponent, hurts him really bad, falls him to the ground, looking for the finish, ground and pound, elbows. And he's like, all right, he's not going nowhere. Starts taking some deep breaths, right? Starts holding it down, chest to chest pressure. Does a lot of things to just be smart, control the position, suck the air out of this guy, make him tired. Smart approach. And then you see Camilo, and he kind of spazzed out, right? Like, he was kind of like, looking for the finish and spending a lot of energy. And man, they came out in round 2. He's a different guy. And he's like, he looked like he was tired. He looked like he was labored. He's shooting half shitty shots. He's putting himself in bad positions and situations. And eventually, a guy from the bottom position is able to set up a guillotine, and the guy's got a long, awkward frame. Like, I don't want to make it sound like he's like the worst fighter of all time, but it just said to me, like, yo, that's a regional level guy who I think is a good regional level guy, Arik Mercado, but he's a regional level guy. And he was able to kind of pretty seamlessly put him through, some bad grappling transitions. And Gabe Green, sneakily 5-0 career to the submission, and I looked. The first thing I looked at this week, I was like, where's Gabe Green's submission priced at? And it's 8-1, which I feel is really low for a guy that has no UFC subs, right? So it's like, where is this coming from? I feel like they are kind of saying, like, hey, maybe Gabe Green, guy who's a former welterweight, can come out here in this one, use that forward pressure, grab a hold of this guy. The one thing about Camilo, in my opinion, bro, like, if you decide, like, I'm pushing this guy back, he'll go backwards. Like, he's kind of got one of these games where he likes to, like, see the space in front of him and fill it up, right, with those big hooks and stuff. So if you move backwards, he'll move forwards. But if you move forwards, he will move backwards. Like, he's kind of one of those guys where you can decide where the fight's going to be. And if Gabe Green does what he normally does, right, you watch the Ian Machado Gary fight. Hell, you watch that Brian Battle fight. He coming the fuck forward, man. He's like, he's going to get in your face. He's going to make you exchange. He's going to move his head a little bit, move the shoulders, and then try and grab a hold of you. And it's like, I do think Mateus Camilo, more powerful and more durable, right? Like, I think that's why he's probably favored in this fight. Younger guy, 24 years of age, 32 for Gabe Green, probably trending in the right direction. But the thing I'm nervous about for Camilo here is, like, I think his ground game is still a work in progress at best. I don't think it's UFC level, tell you the truth. Like, I think guys that are good are going to pass his guard and probably hurt him really bad. Because, like, when you give up bad positions like that and you got to use a lot of energy to scramble out, leaves you tired, you know? And that's the thing for me, that he had to do a couple big transitions in that first round with Arik, and that's why he was like a different guy in round two. And for me, Gabe Green is one of these guys, kind of like a Julian Arosa, another guy we'll talk about on the card. Like, sometimes you touch this guy in the chin once in the first round and it's all over, right? Like, you can go back. I think another California fighter, Jalen Turner, went out there and, you know, grabbed a hold of him. I'm pretty sure put one knee to his chin, and the fight was over shortly thereafter. You know, like, I think that when you look at Gabe, he's a guy that's gotten a couple of those bad knockout losses on his resume. Even guys you've never heard of have knocked him out. But on the other side, it's like, when he doesn't get knocked out, he'd go out there and give you an honest fight. You know, even the Ian Gary fight, he went out there and landed some shots. He got in Ian's face. He pushed Ian back with some good volume. It's just that Ian is a sharper, bigger guy and hit him more times over the course of 15 minutes. He got the nod, but it was like, Gabe didn't make a punk of himself in that fight. And I think, this is off the top of my head, but I think Brian might have missed weight for that Gabe Green fight. I know he's missed weight a couple times in the UFC now. And I believe he missed weight for that Gabe Green fight. And I had Brian Battle via knockout. We got the Brian Battle t-shirt on today to represent. But you got to just remember, like, Gabe Green in that fight was, I believe, slightly favored to beat Brian Battle. I'd have to go back and look, but, like, this guy has basically been given some credit and respect at the window in the past. And now he's getting, you know, not a lot of credit and respect against the guy who wasn't on the UFC radar, right? Like, when you look, what's the feeder system for a lot of guys to get to the UFC? Dana White Contender Series, you know, The Ultimate Fighter, hell, even LFA and some of these shows. Like, you see him on a bunch of these Fight Pass shows. Camilo had the Fury fight. It didn't work out. And then it was the other guy that they're going to look at for looking for a fight, and he gets the win. They're like, hey, fair enough. But the thing that's been a little bit jarring for me as well is I think he kind of needed to tone it back a little bit in terms of his output and aggression, which is like his best attribute, in order to make it 15-minute distance with these guys. And he does end up on his back a lot. So I have to tape Gabe Green in order to decide what I'm going to do with this fight. But I definitely need to see a little bit more from Mateus Camilo before I personally am convinced. I think he's trained him with the right guys. He's young. He looks like he's got a bright future in the sport. Make no mistake. But I just think right now his game's kind of basic, right? He's got big power, right? He's got that good jab. He's got good calf kicks. This is kind of what he does, right? He's got some decent submissions off his back. Like that, I feel like that's his whole game, but he's good at what he does, right? So I think that he's going to go out there and certainly make a solid account of himself. But I just think if Gabe Green is able to maybe take him to the ground, I think we could be dealing with a wild fight, right? Because I don't know what Gabe really has to offer on the mat, but he's been in the sport for a long time. So I wouldn't be surprised if he can give him some questions to solve down there, so to speak. Shout out to Moises in the chat. Says Gabe is a southpaw. Camilo's low calf kick is canceled here. One weapon lost. That's very interesting. I think that's a very interesting note, Moises. How Camilo's cardio late after grappling? I think his grappling cardio is not good, but I think that his cardio on the feet is fine. So that would be my general description. Do you have anything you want to add, Wiz, before we move to the next one, buddy?
No, not at all.
All right. Well, then we're on to the next one, where we've got, speak of the devil, Julian Arosa. He's taking on Mel Kazil Costa Melk. And I think that this should be an interesting fight. The thing for me that makes this handicap kind of weird, Wiz, is I feel like Juicy J looked like he was fighting in literal quicksand his last time out. Like, I thought he looked very, very slow and, stuck in the mud.
I thought I was going crazy watching that. I thought I was the only one seeing him. Like, why is he moving in like negative speed?
He looked slow, and he also was able to get the job done. I think that when you look at his best attributes, he's got a lights out guillotine, sensational, putting away some of the best guys in the sport with that. He's extremely difficult to submit, which I do think is Mel Costa's, bread and butter in terms of what he'd love to do out there. Get on top of guys, get the back, put him in bad situations, land some ground and pound. I think he's pretty good at all that. At distance here, I think both guys have pretty good kicks. I think Mel Costa, what he can rely on is the fact he's the more durable fighter, in my view. I think right now Steve Garcia would probably do horrible things to Julian Arosa more often than not, just because he's such a destroyer, man. He's so violent, comes forward, a lot of offense, extremely aggressive. And I think Arosa's really skilled, but I just think that he's kind of had one of these unfortunate careers where I think he's coming into his own in terms of the best skills of his career at 35. But now his body is starting to slow down a little bit. He's had over 40 professional fights. It's hard to sustain yourself after all that damage accumulated. And the difference with Darren Elkins is there's really not much violence, much danger to his game at this point. He's got to wear you down. He's got to get you tired and then break you down. And Mel Costa, on the other side, he's a dangerous guy. He's got some kicks. He's got some power. I don't think he's the most devastating striker you've ever seen, but he can put some volume together. I think his speed is going to be superior in this matchup. So I don't think it's an easy one to call. I think the line is maybe a touch disrespectful because I do think if Melk, shoots a shitty takedown, like it could be all over in one exchange type of deal. I think Julian Arosa is that good. And guys that didn't respect his guillotine in the past, like Christian Rodriguez, paid a dire price, right? A guy who's very difficult to put away. We've seen a lot of guys try and submit him and not be able to. And Julian Arosa strapped that thing on and he was like, yeah, get me out of here. So I think that if you got a long neck like Costa and, you start dangling it out there, give him an opportunity, Julian will make you pay. But at the end of the day, man, speed kills in fighting. I think Melk is faster. I think he's a little bit younger, crisper. His confidence is up right now. And I think he's probably going to take advantage. But it's not a fight where I feel like I need to get involved. If anything, I'd like violence here more than a side. I just think both these guys have some defensive vulnerabilities and some violence that they're capable of inflicting on an opponent. The Mel Costa and Austin Lingo fight is kind of gross for that. But otherwise, I just think that, I can see either one of these guys getting put away here. What about you, Wiz?
Yeah, that look from Arosa against Elkins, like it could have been two things. It could have been him just trying to be very patient and knowing that there really isn't much on the return that will hurt him. Well, that could be why he was a little bit slower and he was trying to time things. And we kind of saw him get not tagged, but he was getting hit flush by Elkins. And that is where's anything that can wave like a red flag? I'd say nasty one. And Melk is very fast with his striking. That's what I really like about Melk. His shots come up very quickly, and he returns back to his guard, and he's very patient with them, which I tend to favor those kind of strikers, especially when you're going up against another lanky, taller, built striker in Julian, who's going to force you to throw from the outside. Those kicks will come in handy. Those kicks to the body will be much welcomed here for Mel Costa as long as he can land them effectively. Now, on the other hand, we know Arosa has that guillotine. I think Mel does have some grappling deficiencies, but for the most part, pretty educated game on the mat. Really looks to take the back and has some decent ground and pound. I personally think that Arosa might be starting to, lose it a little bit. I'm not saying that just solely based off of the Elkins fight, but the man is about to be 36. He's been doing this fighting thing for a long, long time. And when you have as many miles as he does on the tank, it's going to start to fade away eventually. And look, Melquizael Costa is a 30-fight vet himself. But I think the damage sustained over the career is much more on the Arosa side than Costa. Now, I see this fight playing out in a sense where both guys can get finished at an equal rate. So for me, instead of picking a side and favoring Costa, which is typically where I'm leaning if you're following my breakdown, I actually like the under 2.5 at -170, -160 some places. I think that's going to be a good way to cover both sides. I think Arosa can finish Costa early, and I think Costa can finish Julian anytime. So for me, I think that the under 2.5 is the right way to target this fight. Violence and violence only, just so you're not sweating one side or the other. I do see some people vouching for the dog shot on Arosa, and look, I don't mind it, but I personally just do not like backing fighters with their hands down in terms of striking defense. It's never going to be my favorite thing to do, especially going up against a really fast striker on the other side. So give me the under 2.5. I do think Melk does take this fight. So let's go. I'm really excited. This is actually my favorite fight on the card.
I love it. I think it should be a fun and exciting fight. I think both these guys bring the action more often than not. The one thing I just want to point out, 8-2 career to the sub for Melky Costa, and Julian Arosa, 14-0 career to the sub. I think he's the better grappler here, straight up. But I also think that Melky is not bad, and I think that the way that he could get his grappling going is if he hurts Julian, right? I think that he's just a more dangerous striker at this point in their career. Not because Julian's not dangerous. I think he's very dangerous in his own right. I just think he's a touch slower, like I mentioned. But also, I think Melk is confident that he could take the shots and keep coming forward more than Julian. So I think Julian has to be a little more careful. We basically saw him get hurt badly and sat down in the fight against I'm drawing a blank on his name. I just pulled it up. Ricardo Ramos. Ricardo Ramos kind of busted his face up too. And then as soon as he went to the ground, he got submitted. So I think if Melk is smart, he will try and sprawl brawl, keep this upright, not mixing the grappling here. Because if you go and offensively grapple with Julian Arosa, I think it's going to present a chance that he gasses out because Julian has elite cardio as well as everything else. That's the one thing that's been really impressive about Julian is like his ability to push in round 3. I think Sean Woodson dropped him with a punch and he got back up and submitted him. Like literally he has such a motor that he could get dropped. And then while the other guy is still huffing and puffing, trying to recover, he just gets back up and subs him. So Julian Arosa is an energizer bunny. He just has a bad chin. So I think Mel Costa is alive to win the fight by knockout, but I think Julian, the longer the fight goes, the more chance I give him just because I've seen Melk kind of, slow down a touch as the fight goes on, especially when he puts out a lot early. And I think Julian's the opposite, right? He's the kind of guy that if he senses you slowing down, he just picks up the pace.
Yeah, and one thing to add before we move on to the next fight, if we look at Mel Costa, this is going to be his 3rd fight in 3 months. I understand that I was favoring him and mentioning all this stuff about how I think he's going to, piece Arosa up on the feet. But 3 fights in 3 months, 3 weight cuts in 3 months is not healthy. And that could play a big, big factor. And look, Arosa just fought 3 weeks ago too, but it's not his 3rd fight in the year. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah, the other thing to mention, our very sharp commenter here, one of the sharpest chat members in the game, Glenbot, says Costa seems to falter against bigger guys at, like Garcia and Moises. That's very interesting. Moises, that fight was at lightweight. Obviously, he's a 155-pound fighter. Steve Garcia is a guy that's moonlighted at 145 and 155 pounds. So definitely something to that as well. And I think that Julian Arosa, we should note, 6'1" compared to 5'10", longer reach as well. So he does have some positive attributes here. The more experienced fighter, he's got a nice, interesting plus money tag as well by his name. He's a big underdog here. But I do think that on the feet, it's an uphill battle for him, given the speed and the durability. But on the ground, I think it's anybody's ball game, and I'd have to favor Julian Arosa based on a career of excellence on the ground. No doubt about it. All right, man. Next up, we've got Nursultan Hruziboyev taking on Dustin Stoltzfus. And one thing I try not to do on this show, and all of us fall victim sometimes into saying talking points, right? Like things that are everybody's saying about the fight, right? Because we all kind of, respect the community's opinion on a fight. I think Nursultan Hruziboyev gets a little bit, dismissed offhand, like, Hruziboyev, that guy's a fraud. He's a bum. He sucks. And I'm just like, are we sure about that? Like everything, if he ever wins a fight, it's a fluke. If he loses a fight, he's a fraud. He sucks. And I'm just like, let's go through and objectively look at the record here. So he beat Eric McConaughey. What do you take away from that? I don't freaking know. Like, I don't know who Eric McConaughey is from the next guy, to tell you the truth. Like, just in terms of, is he a good fighter? Maybe, right? I thought he had a decent chance if that fight got extended to make it interesting, but I thought ultimately Hruziboyev could knock him out in the first round. Hruziboyev knocked him out It was in the second round. There it goes. He loses to Buckley. If you guys remember, guys, he's having success at 185. They ask him, hey, can you do this fight at 170? He's like, yeah, sure, no problem. Comes down to 170. I think it's on like a month's notice. And he loses to Buckley. It's like, yeah, there's horrible career matchmaking. Like, his manager should be fired instantly. It's like, why would you ever take that fight? It made no sense. He had some momentum in the division, beats Bruno Ferreira via knockout. That guy is now 4-2 in the UFC, right? Like, good fighter, right? By the way, knocked out RoboCop. By the way, knocked out Stoltzfus. Like, is he not a good fighter? I don't understand why people shit on Bruno Ferreira either. He lost to Abus Magomedov. Yeah, that guy's like came into the UFC 2 fights later. He's in a main event. Like, clearly the UFC thinks pretty highly of him. Everybody thinks he sucks. He goes out there and beats, what's his name? Michel Pereira. Oh, Michel Pereira, somebody shot his dog. He didn't show up to the fight. It's like, all right, man. Like, no matter what happens with this guy, they discredit. So it's just like the shifting goalpost. The Dumas fight. He goes out there. Dumas calls an eye poke foul. The ref doesn't say it. He finishes him, and then he's the bad guy again. It's just like, I mean, maybe, yeah, that one, if you want to call it flukish, okay. Like, there was kind of an eye poke. Fair enough. The one against Bruno Ferreira, everybody calls a fluke, and I'm like, I really don't understand that, because if you watch back the fight, and you have better striking eyes than I do, you could tell me if you disagree, but he goes out there and he basically sets the tone, establishes some kicks, gets the guy to kick back, even though he's the smaller guy. So he throws a kick, he reaches down, grabs it, throws a punch back, and knocks him out with one punch. And it's like, everybody says that's a fluke. And I'm just like, he literally sets an expectation, draws out a reaction, and then punishes the reaction and instantly gets the finish. And now somehow it's not a good win. And I'm just like, what are you supposed to, like, is that not the goal of martial arts? It's not like to finish the fight as fast as possible, as easy as possible, with little damage as possible. That's exactly what he did to Bruno Hulk Ferreira, a guy that we've seen can mix it up in the grappling, a guy that we've seen can mix it up in the wrestling, a guy that we've seen has knockouts of his own. It's like, yeah, he did a pretty good job there, I thought. So he's mostly had a lot of success in the UFC and knocked a bunch of guys out and looked pretty good. So I don't think he's a bad fighter, and I don't think he deserves the disrespect that he gets. Did he have a weird curated career regionally? Sure. Has he gone out there in the UFC? I mean, by the way, guys, how many guys are making it 15 minutes with Buckley in this day and age? Like, a lot of guys are getting knocked the fuck out by Buckley, right? Like, good guys. Guys are established guys. Stephen Wonderboy Thompson get knocked the fuck out. And Nursultan Rousov goes 15 minutes with him. He's a fucking bum. He's a scrub, all this stuff. So for me, the market respects him way more than how analysts and people talk about him, right? I think he deserves more respect. He's got a huge following as well. Something to just keep in the back of our mind, guys. Like, when we talk about A-sides, like, this guy has more followers than everybody else on the card. That's more than Gilbert Burns. That's more than anybody you want to name. So it's like, yeah, this guy could move units on in terms of social media and getting people's attention, stuff like that. I think the UFC put him in this fight with Dustin Stoltzfus, not because it's a lock that he's going to win or something like that, but Dustin Stoltzfus has a negative record in the UFC. He's underwater, right? 3-5 in the promotion. He had a pretty fortunate run out, in my view, against Joe Pyfer. Joe was having some success. It was a back and forth in a fight. Then, lifts him up. Joe bases out on his arm. His arm snaps in half. That's the end of that one. He wins. Loses to Kyle Dawkins, a guy that got cut from the UFC. He's now a UFC level fighter waiting for his opportunity to get back in. But he really wasn't that much of a UFC level fighter when he got here. So Dawkins beats him. Okay. Loses to Adolfo Vieira. No shame in that. He got submitted there. Made a decent account of himself. Loses to Gerald Mearshart. He won a lot of the minutes there. Hats off to him, right? He did a decent enough job. Got Gerald Mearsharted in the third round. Beat Dwight Grant. I mean, that win means nothing, guys. Dwight Grant, with all due respect, was a very washed fighter from New York that had long been washed when he got to the UFC. All he was a power puncher, didn't have any grappling to speak of. That's the truth. Abus Magomedov, he loses that fight. He got punted in the face instantly. Tough run out. Okay, we'll give him a break there. Punahele Soriano, good win, but Puna had virtually no success in the UFC at 185, right? At 170, he moved down. He looks like a whole new man. He looks like a guy who can get off with his wrestling. He looks like a guy whose power translates. But at 185, I think he had one win over like Dusko Todorovic. Like, he really did not put together a great resume at that weight class. He mostly got beat up in those fights. That's the truth. Okay, then we look at the Bruno Ferreira fight. It was a wild brawl. It was a war, but he got brutally finished in that one. And then against MAB, he had some success taking him down. Then he won a wild swinging match. And MAB is kind of a 50-50 guy in the UFC. So when I just look at this matchmaking on paper, I say to myself, you got the younger guy who's much bigger, a little bit more athletic, way more dynamic with the power and the finishing ability. I think Nursultan Rousov is going to knock him the fuck out in the first round. But if the fight gets extended, I think it's anybody's ballgame, right? Because I do think Dustin Stoltzfus has an ability to take people down, get to the top position. I think Rousov does a good job working up early. I think the longer the fight goes, the more he concedes time on his back, the more he starts to get tired, feel sorry for himself a little bit, make bad decisions. So for me, I think in the early going, I favor Rousov pretty heavily, right? In the under 1.5 rounds, I favor Rousov pretty heavily. If the fight extends beyond that, I think Stoltzfus wins more often than not, just because I think he's got a better process for long fights. That fight where he gassed out against GM3, he did a lot of work before he gassed out in that one. And GM3, this is why I was so hyped up on Rene Ritter, guys. GM3 does that to everybody. You fight me for 15 minutes, you will be fucking tired in round 3, and I'll make you pay for it. I'll put you away. And the opposite happened to Rene Ritter. He was like, "You're too tired. Sit down, old man. I'll put you away." And I was like, "Oh my God, no one does this to GM3." So when you look back, like this guy, Dustin Stoltzfus, fell into the GM3 trap. I don't think his cardio is so lights out above Rousov that I can trust it here. So for me, money line side, I guess dogger pass situation. I would almost look at a decision only market, see what Stoltzfus is priced there, because I'd much prefer to avoid the chance that he gets front kick to the face or something and knocked out like he did against Sabus Magomedov. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you just got to pick who you think is going to win the fight. And I think Rousov, the guy with more experience, who's the younger fighter, who's the bigger fighter, and who, in my view, has more ways to win the fight early, is going to win the fight. But I think that in a decision type fight, Stoltzfus is certainly live. How do you feel about this one, Wiz?
Yeah, you just don't see guys that are 6'5" in the middleweight division. It's just one of these anomalies, especially with his reach. Now, there is really no significant reach advantage here, so that's one thing that's going for Stoltzfus. But personally, early on pre-tape, I really leaned towards the Stoltzfus side from just memory. I thought that maybe you'd be able to land some takedowns here effectively early on and kind of take Nursultan into the swamp. But I do, post-tape, I do see myself more leaning towards a live bet on Stoltzfus after round 1.5, if it makes it there, just to, secure the equity. Like, I think Ruziboyev in round 1, that's where he's most likely to get his finish. And if it takes for me to cancel that round out until I take the live bet, I'll get a better price too, hopefully. At least that's what I expect, because I think Ruziboyev is going to go out there. And
I think the only way you don't get a better price is if Stoltzfus takes him down like 30 seconds in and holds him down.
Exactly. And you know what? That can happen. But I do think that Ruziboyev early on is going to be able to power back up to his feet. And I think he's going to land some huge shots on the feet in round 1. Whether they put Dustin away or not, we've seen Dustin, recently take some shots. Most people remember Dustin for the big front kick, toe in the mouth from Abus Magomedov. That was just like the highlight there for Abus and his debut in the UFC. But then a lot of people were writing him out against Bruno Ferreira, and he made people sweat. I was one of those people. I was on the Bruno Ferreira side, and I'm like, what is going on? And it wasn't just, he's winning the round. He was, quite frankly, beating Bruno Ferreira's ass, like in the grappling, on the feet. Bruno Ferreira was just swinging from miles away. In this fight, the reason why I kind of flipped back to I think it's going to be Ruziboyev KO1. Man, Ferreira, let me get the exact number on that reach. He was a ways away from even touching Stoltzfus. He was swinging from really far out. 3 inches of reach is what it was on paper, but you also have to factor in the height. So when you have someone that mainly is a power puncher throwing from 3 to 4 inches away, it's always going to be easy to catch those shots and either move away or counter with a takedown, whatever it is. And that's what Dustin just executed really well in that first round in that fight before he got finished. In this fight, Ruziboyev obviously has the 5 inches of height to his name. So Stoltzfus is going to be the one reaching up now. So the roles are reversed. And Ruziboyev in his career has faced guys on average who are around the 5'11" to 6 foot mark in terms of height. And with Dustin, the issue is he does not move his head. His head is always on the center line. And I think that all it's going to take for Ruziboyev is to land one combination. And I think he's going to be he'll compromise Dustin Stoltzfus pretty badly. For me, I do think that Ruziboyev KO1 has some value on it, but I probably won't end up playing it. I'm gung-ho on hoping that Dustin survives the onslaught in round 1 and taking him live, because I do think he's going to be able to land takedowns. And when you look at Nursultan's record, sure, you see that shiny record with the submissions. And I get it. 20-1 to the submission is such a huge number. But when you see who it's against and how he's getting them off his back, and he's getting a bunch of Kimuras. I just don't think he's going to be able to finish Dustin Stoltzfus, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, by Kimura off his back. It's just, it's very hard for me to grasp that. So for me, I think that Dustin in round 2, if he makes it there and is able to land the takedowns, I think he ends up winning round 2 and round 3 for maybe a greasy split decision. So yeah, let's go Dustin. Let's survive round 1, buddy. Let's do this.
Yeah, I think Ruziboyev's grappling game is a little bit overrated, let's say, by record. But that being said, man, one thing that really is like kind of stand out to me, 33-2 career in fights that end inside the distance. I mean, that's fucking outrageous, right? Like, very few people can boast something like that, even if you're fighting absolute jabronis, right? And then you look at the other side, Dustin Stoltzfus. He is 9-4 in fights that end inside the distance, right? A lot more realistic for a lot of fighters, right? So one thing it tells me is Ruziboyev can put people away, and he's not that easy to put away. So, like, you put Joaquin Buckley in there, like I said, if he's fighting Dustin Stoltzfus, man, I think he's going to knock him the fuck out. Like, you just add, like, between you and me, as my guy Dan Levy would say, I think he knocks him the fuck out. I think that when you look at Ruziboyev, I think the same thing happens here. KO1 is plus 220. KO2 is plus 500. That's the way I see this going down. That being said, Stoltzfus is a decent fighter, a good process. Just not the most athletic guy, not the most durable guy. If I remember correctly, and this is from memory, so don't quote me if I'm wrong on this one, but I believe Stoltzfus, they were talking about like he had some kind of concussion problem coming into the fight with Bruno Ferreira, and then Bruno Ferreira ended up knocking him out in pretty devastating fashion. I'm kind of worried about where he's at long-term with that. So I definitely would look into that. Fact check me, right? Because I'm telling you this is from memory, guys, but I feel like that was a talking point during that fight week, and then he got brutally knocked out again. So he was able to beat MAB, right? He got back on track. It's not like you say, hey, write off this guy forever. But I do think he's accumulated a lot of damage over time. He's normally in these very damaging fights. So something to just keep in the back of our mind. For a guy who's had a lot less fights than Ruziboyev, I think he's actually taken more damage in the course of his career. All right. Next up, folks. We've got 3 left, and it gets better in ascending order, except for that one in the middle. But we'll talk about it. All right, next up, man. We got Sodiq Yousef at 145 taking on, or excuse me, at 155. I mentioned that there's a lot of weight changes on this card, guys. Here's one of them. Sodiq Yousef, a classic featherweight. He's coming up to 155. Myron Santos, guys, how about this? A former bantamweight. He got absolutely smoked by Dan Argueta, who recently retired from mixed martial arts on the regional scene. So Myron Santos now moving up to 155 pounds here. Pretty big weight move over the course of a few years. I believe he was 21 when he fought Dan Argueta. I could be wrong about that. Again, fact check me. But certainly it had to have been a few years ago, right? And he's 24 now, going on 25. So Myron Santos right now should be coming into his own physically as a man. You know, you typically end your physical development as a man around 25 years of age. So he should be getting right to where he's going physically at this stage of his career, should be finding out, you know, what weight class he wants to be moving forward. I believe that he said to the UFC, you know, can we do something at 45? They were like, nah, this is the one we're offering you. It's at 155. Do you want it or not? And he's like, okay, fine. So now he's in the fight. Sodiq on the other side, I think people are ready to write him off a little bit too early here. Now, when you look at where he's at in his career, he's got something to prove right now. You know, he's only had 17 pro fights. So he's not the most active guy in the world. Definitely has other pursuits outside of fighting as well. He's done some Twitch streaming, some this and some that, some content. Like Sadiq seems like a guy who understands like, hey, fighting's not forever. Got to kind of keep my skills broad. Got to work on some other things. However, I think some things that maybe are forgotten about him coming into this matchup is Team Lloyd Irvin guy, classically trained in jiu-jitsu, very understanding of those positions. Go watch the Don Shainis fight. I mean, fucking wrap that guy in a vice grip, right? And Don Shainis, you could say he's not that skilled. Fair enough, right? Maybe he's not UFC level. But is he a tough guy? He's a tough guy, man. He'll take an ass whipping if you want to hand it out to him, right? He'll fire away with you. And Sadiq was smart enough to say, hey, let me bang it out with him a little on the feet, land some shots, get him to make a bad decision, shot him for a bad takedown. Sadiq, hard guillotine pull, finish the fight. You look at Sadiq Yousef, he's been in some tough fights. He's kind of weathered the storm before, figured it out in fights that were tough, found a way to come back and win them, right? Mowgli Benitez comes to mind. How about the fact that, guys, a lot of people have been left, face down and embarrassed by Edson Barboza, for lack of a better word, right? Like he's left a lot of people in a pool of their own blood or sitting down, waving the white flag. Like that's what he does to people. He's an excellent striker. He's extremely devastating with his power. And Edson went out there and, landed just about anything you could want to on Sadiq Yousef over 25 minutes, could not put him away. Sadiq is tough as an old leather boot, man. And when you look at it, he's a little bit chinny. I think that's fair to say. And I think it's always been the case in his UFC run, but the toughness is not a question for me. Like this guy's tough as shit. He's actually hard to put out cold. Like you could hurt him, no doubt. Putting him out cold, a lot harder to do. Diego Lopes hits like a truck, guys. He's put several guys out bad, good fighters as well. He's a big hitter, right? Especially since coming to the UFC. He's been a lot more confident in his power. He's been a lot more willing to throw in the clinch. And when guys are clinching, it's a great time to knock them out because they're not in a great defensive position, right? How many times has Justin Gaethje hurt somebody while holding the back of their head and then throws that big uppercut? It's like, that's a great way to make sure your punch lands, right? Yeah, I know where it's going. Let me punch myself in the hand through his face. Bing! Like, really good idea. So I think that Diego Lopes made him pay for wanting to be in the clinch there. And, when you look at this fight, could Myron Santos win this fight by knockout? Yes. But I just remember everybody telling me that Myron Santos was going to wash Francis Marshall. And I was like, are you guys sure about that? Are we sure about that? I picked Francis Marshall to win the fight by split decision, and he got fucked, right? So it was what it was, right? At the end of the day, I said it was either Santos by knockout or this guy by decision. And, I thought the wrong guy got his hand raised. I'll just leave it there. I think Myron would agree with me. So at the end of this discussion, it leaves me with this. I got a guy in Sadiq Yousef on one side who lost two really, really, really legit fights in a row, right? Like, as fucking proven as it gets. Diego Lopez just fought 3 rounds to 2 for a title. It's like maybe 4 rounds to 1 if you're a big Volk fan. Okay, fair play. It's like that's what he just did. So pretty good fighter, I would reckon, right? Edson Barboza, a career 155er, by the way. At his best, a 155er, a big man, a strong man. He nearly got knocked out by Sadiq Yousef 4 times in the first round. He got hurt badly. Whatever steroid cycle they've got him on, the guy's invincible. Bro, Edson Barboza was hurt so bad on a number of occasions, and he would just go like blink 3 times and be back to normal. And I was like, how is he doing this? Like, unbelievable after a lifetime of combat and everything else. So Edson used a lot of veteran experience and probably scientific advancements to stay in that fight when he was so badly hurt and compromised early and often. And then Sadiq kind of spent a lot trying to put him out, man. He's threw like 41 significant strikes that landed on Edson in the first round. A lot of them were 100% power. And he was still there for 5 rounds. That's hard to do. Like, guys, it's hard. Look at RoboCop against Jerry Cannonier. He tried to get him out of there, and he couldn't. And then he was dead. That's what normally happens to guys. They throw everything at somebody, they have nothing left, and they capitulate. And, bro, he didn't do that. When he had nothing left to give from a cardiovascular standpoint, he got spinning kicked in the head. He grabbed the fence to hold himself upright. Then he turns around and starts fighting again. You're just like, this guy is fucking crazy tough. So you have a guy on one side in Myron Santos who beat Ken Offley, who we have no evidence is a UFC level fighter. Right? Then he beats Francis Marshall, who he didn't beat and who we barely have evidence is a UFC level fighter. Am I missing something here? Like, I think Myron Santos is fine, but I just don't think he's proven enough to be like substantially favored in climbing against a guy like Sadiq, who, in my opinion, has better wins, better quality of experience. So I'm a little bit confused. I get the younger fighter, that for me checks out. The more durable fighter, I think I would give Myron as well. But when you're getting kind of beat up on the feet by Francis Marshall at points, when you're getting taken down, giving up bad situations and bad positions, am I supposed to believe that it's impossible that Sadiq could either A, hurt him, B, take him down, or C, compete with him over the course of 15? I'm not sold on any of those. So I think Sadiq has chances to win this fight. And I think that I'd love to see a big underdog price on him to feel more confident, taking the click with that side. But I picked Diego Lopez by knockout in the first round. That was not a surprise to me in any way. I think that this is the kind of fight where normally Sadiq Yousef would be like a minus 200 favorite. So I'm a little confused. How do you feel about this one, Wiz?
Yeah, I've been flip-flopping on this one quite a bit, and to say the honest truth, I just do not have the best of reads when it comes to this fight, because look, I was one of those who was cheering on Myron Santos in his debut. Did not have money on him, but was definitely left a little bit underwhelmed by the performance, first of all. Now, it could have been UFC jitters, just first time under the bright lights and so on and so forth. We say this a lot. Or it just could have been, a piece of humble pie. And then you look on the Sadiq side, has not been really all that active. Last time we saw him in the cage was a year ago. And my big question mark on the Sadiq side is, where is his head at? Especially after recovering from a bunch of injuries. Someone in the chat said it was, he was talking about it during media day. It was back injuries, and that's never going to be a good thing, especially when you're only 31 years young. Moving up a weight class also is just making me question it a little bit more on his side rather than anything, just because he's the fighter that's been out for so long. Myron Santos, I think if they offered him the fight at featherweight, he would have probably been able to make featherweight. But I think it's more contingent on the Sadiq side, because if it's bulging discs in your back, you probably took a bunch of legal steroids, not the illegal kind, not the Flintstone gummies, but that stuff does put on some extra weight, and it's a little bit harder to lose. Now, if we're talking pure, just, injury, BS, all that aside, skill for skill, I mean, I just do not see how this line is accurate. You're going from someone in Myron Santos who, not arguably, did lose to Francis Marshall. Those judges were smoking some crack. And then you're looking at someone in Sadiq Yousef who has been fighting the cream of the crop. Tough as nails, always shows up and puts his best foot forward. I think Sadiq, the line here is a little bit disrespectful, but I think the line is indicating that it's more of an injury thing. It's more that, okay, he's been gone for a year with all the back injuries and just inactivity. They're speculating that he's just, not in it anymore, and that could prove to be very, very wrong. And a lot of times we all count out guys like Sadiq in the MMA space in a fight just because of the long absences and the long absences due to injury, moving up a weight class. Sadiq also used to have like a massive presence on social media and kind of disappeared, where he had like the not so serious fight breakdown, and people loved him. So he did take a step back from that too. So I just question where his head's at, but nonetheless, other than that, I think that this fight is his to win. So for me, I'm predicting Sadiq to win, but look, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm not all too confident, but I do think that if it's skill for skill, this is Sadiq Yousef all fucking day.
Yeah, and Wiz, the other thing for me is at 155, I like it better for Sadiq. Like, I don't think Myron Santos could really be bigger than he was at like 45 type of deal. You know what I mean? Like Sadiq Yousef.
He looked fluffy, didn't he?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't think he looked exceptional in his last fight. So I think that he could make 35, but it would be very difficult as he gets older, and it would require an immense amount of discipline. And so I think he moved up to 45, and now they're saying, fuck you, move up to 55. See how that turns out. And I could just say, man, like I wrestled 57 and I wrestled 65. I told you I tried to move up, right? One day at a tournament, we needed somebody to wrestle 74. So I weighed in 63 that day. I wrestled 74. I could just tell you, man, the more you keep doing that, moving up in weight and whatever, you can move around. Everything's fine early, but the longer it goes on, you're trying to move around somebody heavier than you. It gets exhausting. And I think that for Myron Santos, if Sadiq forces him to grapple, I think it would get him exhausted because Sadiq's a big guy, strong guy, knows how to move around, knows how to grapple. So I think Capping Service makes some great points. I wanted to shout him out. Really sharp guy in the chat. You guys can check out his work as well. Bet MMA and everything else. Find him on Twitter. Very, very sharp guy. Talk to him in the DMs with some regularity. He took the under 2.5 plus 210. I think that's an insane price, to tell you the truth. I'm really surprised by that. So I'll just leave it at that. I'll look into that price myself. I'm kind of confused. Either Yousef is washed and he gets hurt, or he's not washed and he smokes this guy. Lord willing, in either direction. I think that that's a good way to target this fight, especially to not have to pick a side, get involved with some violence. I think Myron Santos, his best attribute, he's got some knockout power. He's got sharp delivery on his strikes. I think Ken Offley was surprised by that, and he's not an easy guy to put away. So I think Sadiq, propensity to get hurt, got power in his hands in his own right, got the ability to potentially mix in some submissions in this one. Myron Santos got his knockout power. So I like that look, man. I think both guys could be vulnerable in this spot. And the weight class is a whole new X factor, right? Where I do think maybe it could improve Sadiq's chin to push back against our point, but also where's his power at 155 might be significant. Myron Santos, the best of his power might be at 155, So I think it's an interesting fight for a number of different reasons. Speaking of fights that will not be plus 240 to go under 2.5 rounds, we got Paul Craig taking on Rodolfo Bellato. Wiz, why don't you lead us off with the light heavyweights? Paul Craig, the Bear Jew, moving back up to 205 after a stint that did not turn out so well in the middleweight division.
Absolutely. And you know what? This fight is going to be absolute memery because it can go a lot of different ways. I feel like Paul Craig has a legitimate chance in this fight. Although the odds say otherwise, I do think that Paul Craig can pull something off here. Now, when we're breaking it down from the high level, Rodolfo Bellato is going to be someone who's going to look to keep this fight on the feet. In his last few fights, not the prettiest in terms of striking and specifically the striking defense. When you're getting dropped multiple times and hurt multiple times, arguably, maybe getting lucky to stay in there and the ref not calling it for the fight against Jimmy Crute and the fight against Ihor Potieria. That was...
Some guys get a longer leash than others, right? Dom Cruz is still sitting over there fucking cursing out Keith Peterson, right?
Liam, I kid you not, those two fights, I kind of just... Yeah, rewatching them when I was taping, I just do not know how they weren't stopped. I think any other ref besides those two would have stopped those fights. Anyways, you look at Paul Craig, I think 185 was maybe a failed project for him. Cut too much weight, looked a little bit too fragile, wasn't able to do what he usually does. Paul Craig is someone that we see try to press fighters against the cage and pull guard because he's very comfortable off his back. His jiu-jitsu game is one of the best out there. This guy submitted the champion, Ankalaev, albeit after getting his ass handed to him for 3 rounds, winning in the last 15 seconds of the fight. Kind of embarrassing for Ankalaev, but he still did it. And this is the guy that also beat Jamal Hill. He's beat, you look at this guy's resume and he has some good wins. And again, one of these guys that the UFC just seems to hate. Look at his last 5. Bo Nickel, Caio Borraio, Brendan Allen, Andre Muniz, which he won, and Johnny Walker. I'm not saying it's like murderer's row, but it is like top 5, top 10 caliber fighters. And then on the other hand, you have Rodolfo Bellato going to a majority decision draw with Jimmy Crute. I just think that the line is a little bit too inflated here on the Bellato side. I get it. I completely understand that if this fight doesn't hit the mat, minus 500 maybe will seem value. But from what I've seen on the Bellato side with his striking defense, I think anybody can land on him. And Paul Craig does have some power at light heavyweight. And if he's able to get this fight down to the mat, I think Bellato is in some deep trouble. So I personally took the poke on Paul Craig by sub. I just, don't see how Bellato can look as a minus 500 favorite. More importantly, the best bet on this fight is the under 1.5. I think the minus 135 price tag that it's at right now is pretty generous. I think it should honestly be aligned closer to a minus 180, minus 190, because I do think both these guys are going to go out there and they're going to swing dicks. So let's see who's dicks bigger.
Man, I think Adolfo Bellato is pretty tragic as a fighter. I do not think he's very good. That being said, he has the benefit of being in a division that is horrible. Just a horrific division, a very, very talentless division, with all due respect, right? In terms of depth, just light heavyweight has very little depth. Most of the fighters are not very good. And if you look at Paul Craig, he's kind of an indictment of the light heavyweight division, right? Like, if you look at light heavyweight, Paul Craig should have no wins over anybody, right? Like, just based on his skills. He's a meme lord. You said memery. He's a meme lord. He really is, in terms of he is a guy with a very good guard game. And that just seems like the worst skill set. Like, if you were like, all right, I got this light heavyweight prospect, how are we going to build him up? It's like, ask Liam McGeary how being the guard specialist turns out for you when you're a prospect. It normally doesn't end very well, right? Somebody slams in your head or you get knocked out. It's like, being a guard guy at a big volatile weight class is not a good idea. And Paul made a career of it, right? I think that the reason everything stopped working at middleweight is because guys have real skills, like, and light heavyweight, they don't. So, a bunch of guys with no real skills take you down, they get on top of you, they almost knock you out. And then, I put up a triangle, here we go. I think when you look at Paul's game at middleweight, he got some wins, right? He got a win over Muniz, fantastic win in a lot of ways, right? Like, based on his skill set, that's like as good. That's like the ceiling on Paul Craig's wins, right? Beating a really good jiu-jitsu guy by just being a more gritty, all-around MMA fighter. It found a way to win. Like, that's the Paul Craig way. But the fights that give me real pause about Paul Craig, just in general, Volkan Ozdemir, where Volkan is clearly a higher level fighter than Bellato, but the way he was able to engage with him on the ground and shut it down easily and beat him up from the top position kind of just told me, like, guys are starting to get a beat for how to deal with Craig on the ground. Like, hey, maybe just don't go into the full guard. Maybe don't give him opportunities to set up the triangle series that he really likes, because that's what he really likes. And if he can't get that, he's kind of functionally useless off the ground, right? And then he's just a long, awkward guy that you could beat up on from top position. That's exactly what Volkan did. Stayed very safe, was never in even a shred of danger in that fight. The other thing that's concerning for me is the Bo Nickel fight. And if you guys remember, I said it on this show. You guys can go back and watch. I said Paul Craig can't box at all. And so that is why I was quite confident that Rene de Ridder was a more serious challenge for Bo on the feet. He fucking boxes, right? He attempts shots with his fucking hands in a forward motion. That is more than Paul Craig does. Paul Craig kicks and he does guard jiu-jitsu, which is like the worst base for MMA that you could possibly imagine. So I just think to myself, like, Paul is the money line side, right? Because it's a huge money line and light heavyweight is generally bad. Bellato himself is bad. He's not good at MMA, right? Stands very square, gets hit very cleanly on the return, literally stands there like this and throws like that. Like, it's that fast, right? It looks like a cardio kickboxing class, but clearly when a man of his size hits you, it does damage. And that's why most of the time he's taking big damaging shots. He's kind of rolling with them a little bit. He's throwing back, but when he starts landing on guys, they don't like it. And the fight that I'll leave with on this Paul Craig analysis is the Johnny Walker fight, where he takes one big punch to the side of the head and goes down to middleweight because he was like, fuck, I don't need this shit in my life no more, right? These guys are big. They hit really hard. I don't want to be in there and get hit in the head really hard. Johnny Walker is no good. Like, Johnny Walker is Adolfo Bellato after 5 years of the UFC, right? Taking a bunch of knockout losses, been exposed for the flaws that he has in his game, but, like, at the end of the day, he's a violence machine. He's a big Brazilian violence machine that he can knock you out or he can get knocked out. And that's Adolfo Bellato. The difference for me is just like, could Paul Craig knock him out? Yeah, but it would kind of take him getting to the top position, I feel. You know, if it's just on the feet, maybe he could catch him, but what is he going to fucking throw a kick? Like, he doesn't throw punches. So he needs to get this fight to the ground or he won't attempt punches. And then it's like, on the feet, his kicks are slow and bad. And Adolfo Bellato, slow and bad punches get to the target a little bit faster than slow and bad kicks, in my view. That's why Bo Nickel was able to defeat him in a striking match. And Paul just didn't make any good adjustments in that fight either. So I feel like his corner didn't give him great advice in that fight. You know, he could have won that fight with simply throwing punches in a forward direction at Bo's face, head, neck, or chest. He didn't attempt it. So I don't really know where Paul's at 37. He's moving back up in weight. I want to see what he looks like on the scales before I would part ways with my money, to tell you the truth. Like, if he looks fat and happy to be here, 0%er for me. But if he looks like he showed up in shape and wants to redeem himself, this is the kind of fight where he could do it. One takedown could be the difference maker here. Bellato is not good in my view. Bellato has been a walking liability. Vitor Petrino, right, the guy who knocked him out twice, he's not good. And I am so disgusted that I basically called out Vitor Petrino being bad and then didn't bet against him in the 2 times where he lost in the UFC. You know, I called it out before the Anthony Smith fight. I was like, I don't think this will be the time he loses. And then he loses. So Vitor Petrino, for me, kind of fraudulent, and he cleaned up Bellato twice. So I just don't think Bellato is very good. I think Bellato is an accident waiting to happen. I think if you lay him at minus 500, you deserve what's coming to you, and it will come to you. If not this fight, another fight. So for me, I think Bellato is a huge liability, and I think somebody's getting finished here in all likelihood. But if it's round 2 or round 3, it's probably Paul Craig. That means something probably went wrong. If it's round 1, it's anybody's ball game in my view. So yeah, I think Paul. If you see this fight end up in a guard position, I think Paul will have looked like hindsight value. And if it doesn't, I think he will look like a very square bet. So that's just the way I see it going down, man. And Bellato at minus 600, nobody in the UFC I would play Bellato at that price against, period.
It's going to be Paul Craig by Flying Triangle, Liam. We all know this.
What's that?
It's going to be Paul Craig by Flying Triangle.
Yeah, I mean, it's very possible. Capping Service says Bellato is going to touch him once, and it doesn't even matter if he hurts him. He's going to immediately throw a 20-punch combination. I do think that that's the most likely outcome, is that he just spams him with offense. But I will just say, man, like, when you look at this guy Bellato, I think that he is just like a spastic, enthusiastic, violent man. And I think like his skills are extremely lacking. That's honestly how I feel. I know that he's got that one decent takedown. He's gotten to the mount. You know, he knows how to finish a fight on the ground as well. But boy, oh boy, like he just feels to me like a coin flip fighter, you know, in general. Like, should he be favored against Paul Craig? Yes, because his MMA game is like long-term functional and Paul's makes no sense at all. But Paul's has worked against good fighters, and Bellato is barely, you know, getting these wins against guys that are entry-level UFC fighters. So that takes us to the main event of the evening, my brother. Gilbert Durinho Burns taking on Michael Morales, Spider-Man himself. I'm kidding, of course. But guys, I just want to say before we get into this main event, before we get into this fight in earnest, please get subscribed to the channel if you're not already. Drop a like on this video if you've enjoyed the content. Make sure to support my guest co-host here on the show, Wizz MMA. All his information down in the description box below. And if you're looking for any more from me, you can find that in the description below as well. That's LiamPicksFights everywhere: Patreon, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram. God bless, good luck, and enjoy the content wherever you find it. The main event, we're back at it, guys. The main event of the evening, Gilbert Durinho Burns, 22-8 as a professional, done a great job in the UFC, fought at lightweight, fought at welterweight, and now, you know, a former welterweight title challenger trying to hold serve. He's the number 8 ranked guy in the division. He's taking on an undefeated fighter in Michael Morales, undefeated as a pro, undefeated in the UFC. That's 5-0 in the promotion, 3 knockouts as well. Michael Morales seems like the goods to me. As far as I'm concerned, a no-doubter championship ceiling. But the fight's on Saturday, right? So he's got a long time to come into his potential. Is he ready for this step up, for this main event 5-round opportunity on Saturday night? Wiz, what do you think, my brother?
Yeah, I'm going to keep this one short and sweet. I think Morales is going to be able to outstrike Gilbert Burns from the outside if he wants to. But to be honest with you, I just see Michael Morales finishing Gilbert Burns within 2 rounds. No disrespect to Gilbert Burns here. Absolute legend of the sport. I just think he is, at the wrong weight class. He's a blown up 155er. We've seen him get dropped by jabs before, and striking defense on the Burns side is just a big red flag. Now, also, you got to ask, at 38 years old, what is the motivation? There's let's call it 13-year age gap here. We know the stat. I'm not going to repeat it. It's just everything is in the favor of Michael Morales here. The reach, the height, age, athleticism, the skill set. And I think Gilbert Burns' best shot here is if he's able to land takedowns and get some top time and maybe find a submission. Because if there's one thing Gilbert Burns is damn good at, is he's multi-time Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion, and he can submit anyone. But I just struggle to see how that happens because I think that Gilbert Burns is going to be on the back foot the whole fight. I don't think Michael Morales is going to let him off the leash here. And whether it's just jabbing him from the outside until he lands the one clean shot over the top, or if it's just a submission of shots and it's a TKO finish on the mat, I just think Morales finishes Burns within 2 rounds. And I've heard whispers of this being Burns' retirement fight, so who knows? But absolute legend of the sport, Gilbert Burns. Shout out to him, and much love to Michael Morales. I do think this guy at some point will be champion. We forget that he's only 25 years old, and he's fought some good names in the division. So I think that the way the UFC is building this guy up, he's destined for stardom. So I'm a big supporter of Michael Morales' career here.
Yeah, I think this is the toughest guy he's ever fought. But when it comes down to it, man, I think that Michael Morales is the guy right now. I think that when you look at Gilbert and what he brings to the table, you see a very good fighter, very sound skills. He's got power on the feet. People have to reckon with that. Even a guy like Khamzat Chimaev had to show a lot of respect to the ground game of Gilbert Burns. He took him down. He felt a little bit on the ground. He's like, fuck that. I was standing right back up out of this. I don't need these problems in my life. And just stood back up, right? Gilbert, from his guard, is extremely dangerous. Against Damian Maia, he was able to hit sweeps, roll underneath, invert. The guy is extremely technical on the mat. Very good. He's a good scrambler. You see the videos of him, rolling around on the mats, even in the practice room, right? Taking down Kevin Lee and these things, like in really deep, long, extended scrambles. The guy, he's just got such a flow, such an understanding of his position. I think the only way that I could see Gilbert winning this fight, honestly, is if he's able to either, number one, connect with one of those big overhands, right? He throws big bungalows, right? He takes risks on the feet. And when you do that, you can hurt somebody, right? Even if they're a big, tough kid. And so maybe he can hurt Michael. I think that's a possibility. And I think his ground game is sensational. So there's a chance, in my view, that Gilbert can maybe hop on his back and, make a moment happen in an instant type of thing. But you look at Gilbert's game and, his best skill set in terms of his jiu-jitsu, it's his arm bars. It's kind of a niche skill set for MMA. It's not really the things that you see a lot of guys finishing MMA fights with, right? Like rear naked chokes and guillotine chokes. Like those are the higher percentage holds that actually finish guys and put them away, right? I always say you can't really tough guy your way out of a choke. You just go to sleep like anybody else, right? Like it's just nothing you can do. An arm bar, like some guys let that shit snap and just keep going, right? And then you wasted a lot of energy. And again, it's few and far between, but we're talking about high-level fights. We're talking about guys that are trying to fight for titles, and Gilbert Burns, former title challenger, Michael Morales, never lost one of these damn things. So you might have to break that arm to get him to give it up, right? And when you look at this guy, I think to myself, like, Gilbert kind of has a weird game, again, the arm bars are sensational, but he's getting them against guys that are a little bit smaller, guys that are at 155 pounds primarily, right? Michael Morales, he comes from a wrestling background, Ecuadorian, a guy that I think when you look at the biggest vulnerability he has coming into this matchup, you look at Gilbert, Neil Magny was able to get his back in an exchange, not hooks in, but, standing in the rear waist cinch. And there are a couple positions where I think Morales has been caught out of position, and he landed that spinning back elbow, right? He showed, hey, I'm still dangerous no matter where you are. But it is the kind of thing where, hey, giving up some bad positions, some bad angles, that could come back to bite you. But at root, I think when you look at a grappling matchup, you have to consider a couple different factors. And you have to consider whether somebody is going to be physically capable of getting their opponent down to the mat. And I think that Gilbert could get Michael Morales down, but I don't feel confident that he will, because I do think Michael Morales, good scrambler, good takedown defense, good hips, pretty difficult guy to out-grapple. So if Gilbert is able to have success, I think that's how he does it. I think he's going to have to make this kid grapple. I think even if he hurts him, he's probably going to have to grapple him there too. Like I would be a little surprised if Gilbert's able to put him away with strikes. I think Morales is a tough kid. I think he could grab a hold of the clinch and kind of hang on a little bit, use his big body, his big frame, 6 foot tall compared to 5'10", 8-inch reach advantage. So when I look back, I think it was impressive for me that Gilbert Burns did not get finished by Sean Brady. We saw the champion, former champion Leon Edwards get finished and cleaned up, in devastating fashion by a guy like Sean Brady. And Gilbert was able to scramble and move with him. But I actually picked Sean Brady by submission in that fight because I was so confident he would be able to dominate Gilbert on the mat. Despite Gilbert's credentials, despite Gilbert's skill. And Gilbert even did better than I expected, right? He didn't get finished. He kept scrambling, he kept trying to move. But you see that there's levels in the wrestling and the grappling, and Gilbert is a high level. But in MMA context, people wrestle. People look for control. They look to hold people down. And Gilbert can be held down in some of those spots, right? He can be put in those awkward positions for him. We've seen that as well. Sean Brady was able to do that. So I don't think Michael wants anything to do with him on the ground, period. I think what Michael should be doing is sprawling, brawling, keeping this fight upright, where he has, in my opinion, huge advantages. I do think on the feet, Morales is the cleaner, better striker. I think he will probably land at a better clip. I think he could probably do it, more comfortably over the course of 25 minutes. I think when Gilbert Burns tries to go hard on the feet, he does gas himself out pretty badly. We saw that against Kamaru Usman. I thought he was death gassed 7.5 minutes into that fight. Had literally nothing left to give, and was getting hurt, like you mentioned, with jabs in that fight. And I think Michael Morales doesn't always get credit for the power, but most especially the finishing instincts. I think that this guy, when he senses that he has you hurt, puts you the fuck away, man. And I think that some of these guys haven't shown like, hey, I'm ready to go home. And so he sticks behind his game plan, 15 minutes, goes out there, does what he needs to do. If you go back to his Contender Series fight, it was a little bit sloppy at times, right? He had some awkward moments. He was a young kid trying to get the win there. And what you saw is when he needed it, bro, the physicality was there. He just picked that guy up and throw him any which way but loose, right? And I think Gilbert is too small to prevent Morales from doing that if he wants to. So I think it'd be wise for Morales not to wrestle, grapple, mix it up with him at all. But I do think that Morales will be able to muscle him in the clinch and pick him up and throw him around a little bit if he needs to, based on the physicality, the size difference, the fact that one guy's 25 and one guy's 38. I can tell you in the grappling room that does matter, right? Not 1-to-1, right? There are 38-year-olds that whoop on 25-year-olds, but you take the average 25-year-old in the gym, average 38-year-old in the gym, I'll tell you how that one's ended. The guy who's 38 gets tired, right? And that's the truth. It's just hard to keep the pace with these kids that are young, enthusiastic, hungry. They really want it. They're getting after it. They got that good pace going, and their body's not telling them to give up yet. And I think for a guy like Gilbert, it would take a really special effort for him to win this fight. And it's not to say he can't do it, right? He's got the skills. He's got the experience at a high level. But if his motivation isn't on 100, if he doesn't want to go out there and give everything to get this win, which I do have some questions at his age, right? In an Apex fight, right? This isn't in front of a huge crowd in Miami where everything's on the line against Masvidal. It's some show that's going to be a pretty forgettable one on the UFC calendar, all things considered. And so I think that when you look at it, Gilbert's the money line side here, right? If you're taking a money line, you're taking Gilbert Burns, or you're keeping your hands clean to this one. But I kind of lean towards violence in this one. I don't think Gilbert's going all 25 here. I think Sean Brady has a very good grappling game to smother people and break them over time, but Gilbert has just enough skills on the ground to prevent that from happening. And I think in this fight, it's pretty binary, where if Gilbert doesn't find opportunities to grapple, I think Michael will eventually hurt him. And I think Michael has excellent finishing instincts. I don't think he will let Gilbert hang around, much like Jack, right? Jack, and here's the credit I want to give to Gilbert, right? He's taking down Jack Della. He's getting good positions. On my scorecard, I did not agree with the judges. I agreed with Sal D'Amato, something you will not hear me say frequently on this show. I thought it was 1 round apiece. I thought the third round, Jack, was probably trending towards losing that third round until he rallied, got back up to his feet, and put the finishing touches on that one. I thought that was a sensational performance. I also question how Gilbert responds based on the fact that he's been knocked out. He's been audited for 25 minutes. He's been through the ringer, in his MMA career at this point. And on the other side, Michael Morales, everything's looking up for this kid. Everything's looking aces. If he loses here, career easily gets rebuilt, put on track. So there is that. But I'll just say, man, I like a lot of what I've seen from this kid. I think that he's a winner. I think that Gilbert Burns is a great fighter that is past his prime. And I think that Michael Morales is still coming into his prime. So give me Michael Morales. I think he's going to knock out Gilbert Burns and announce himself as a real contender in this welterweight division. I think that the turnover at 170 is a space that we should be watching as MMA fans right now. And I mentioned it in the Belal Muhammad breakdown. I said, I thought Belal was a great champion and he deserved to get the opportunity. He had earned it. How did he earn it, though? He beat Gilbert Burns. And if you remember, both of them got hurt badly. Belal before the fight, Gilbert 1 round into the fight. And that's because they're both in their mid to late 30s. And it's very hard to do competitive cage fighting for many years at this age. And so I think that Gilbert is a guy who's been broken down by time. And I think Michael Morales is just a fresher guy, the guy who's got more to give right now on Saturday night. And I think he's the more dangerous guy on the feet. So for all those reasons, I'm going with Michael Morales to knock out Gilbert Burns and take his number 8 ranking in the 170-pound class. And that's all I got for you folks. Wizz, anything you want to let the people know before we get out of here, where they could find you, what you got going on, anything like that, my brother?
Liam, I'm just thankful to be able to share this info week in and week out on the channel and be able to talk fights with you because over the past 3 to 4 weeks, I've been getting people messaging in the DMs and just thanking not just me, but you for all the hard work we do. And we appreciate you guys. We try to just give out as much accurate and as sharp as we can be information to you guys. And we appreciate you guys for being interactive in the chat. It means a lot to us. Shout out to Captain Service for that dono. We probably the biggest dono we've gotten since we reunited with this Wednesday, Thursday night stream. So thank you so much, Captain Service. Thank you to everyone in the chat that's been active. Whether you agree with our takes, whether you disagree, or whether you're here for just the content and the commentary, we really appreciate you guys all. It means a lot.
1000%. I love the message, Wizz. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much. Capping Service says, appreciate the content. We appreciate you, brother. $100 dono. That is the biggest, I think, in the history of this channel. So thank you so much, my man. It means the world. Appreciate you. Wanted to just say, guys, thank you to everybody who donated. Donations are never asked for. They are always appreciated very much. God bless everybody who's supporting the show. Chris V, Daz Files, Capping Service, the 3 people that donated today on stream. Truly appreciate the support, guys. It means the world. Says, guys put out 2+ hours of deep breakdowns every week. That's the truth, and I love doing it, so it's a pleasure for me. It's a pleasure to talk to my brother, Wizz. I do it on air, off air. It's a pleasure every time. So thank you guys for the support. Thank you to my co-host, Wizz MMA, for another great show. If you guys have questions, comments, concerns, go ahead and fire those off in the comment section down below. I try and respond, especially if you ask a question. If you just show love and support, I show love and support back. And I appreciate all the comments and the feedback. So, guys, thank you all. The GOAT of the week every week is whoever puts the timestamps in first, just so you guys know. And we've had a bunch of different GOATs of the week and some people being really consistent too. So thank you guys all so much for the support. Anything else you need to know about me, us, the show, it's in the description box down below. It's easy to find. Thank you all. Come back next time. We're having all the same fun again. See you guys.